Hello and welcome guys. Make yourselves comfortable and enjoy. Well, let's continue now. This is Necromancer of the Shadows, Chapter 501. After a few hours of flight, the plane landed safely at the Central City Airport. When the plane landed, Evan was already awake. Before leaving the plane, he used telepathy skill and asked Sebastian and Nathan not to tell anyone about the large number of his shadow undeads. Although Sarah knew about Elijah and some of his shadow undeads, she was still unaware of the total number of his shadow undeads. Other than Nathan and Sebastian, no one knows that he has hundreds of shadow undeads, who are all at the peak of A rank or A+ rank. Sebastian and Nathan easily accepted his request, and assured him they wouldn't tell anyone about his shadow undeads or skills. When they left the plane, some people were already waiting for them at the airport. They were stationed there to receive normal people found in the Dark Guild space. Nathan and Sebastian had many things to deal with, so after instructing the people who were stationed there, both of them left the airport. Evan and other students were brought back to the hotel they were staying in the Central City. After reaching his room in the hotel, the first thing Evan did was to summon Kazal. "You know what to do, right?" Evan said as he walked towards the bathroom of the hotel. Kazal nodded his head and disappeared from the hotel room. After Kazal left, Evan took a long bath to clean himself and changed his clothes. He checked his shadow storage and saw Adam was already awake. He left the bathroom and summoned him. Before asking anything, he first checked if there was anything different about Adam. Only after confirming that he was completely fine, Evan sighed in relief. One more thing that surprised Evan was that when he tried to look for Adam's soul orb to see its condition, he wasn't able to find it. It was like his soul orb disappeared somewhere. At first, Evan thought there was something wrong with Adam, but when he looked at his other shadow undeads, he discovered he couldn't see their soul orb as well. Although he was puzzled why he was able to see Adam's soul orb earlier, he didn't think too much about it, since it was not important for the time being. After confirming there was nothing wrong with Adam, he finally asked him what happened inside the dungeon. At first, he was afraid that Adam would also forget what happened inside the dungeon, just like Kazal, but luckily that didn't happen, and Adam remembered everything clearly. After knowing what happened inside the dungeon, Evan was shocked to his core. Although Adam was at the peak of A rank, he could even fight against an S rank hunter to some extent, because of his gravity element. But after knowing he died without being able to do anything made Evan wary of the person who killed him. He was even more shocked to learn that this person was also capable of making Adam feel pain. Evan knew after becoming a shadow undead, they couldn't feel pain, and it is the biggest advantage of his shadow undeads. They can keep fighting without being afraid of pain and death. However, according to Adam, the person inside the dungeon has the ability to not only make them feel pain, but also to actually kill them. "This is more troublesome than I thought," Evan muttered with a deep frown on his face. According to what Adam said, Evan can confirm that the person inside the dungeon is definitely far stronger than an S-rank hunter. At the same time, the chances of that person having a monarch physique just like him also increase greatly. He knew the difference between a normal hunter and a hunter who has the monarch core, instead of a normal core. The chances of a normal hunter being able to kill Adam like that were extremely low. "I need to prepare properly before going there," Evan rubbed his temples and said in a tired voice. The first thing that he needed to do was obviously to raise the rank of his calls. With the resources that he collected in the last 48 hours, it was not difficult for him to increase the rank of his prime core to S. But Evan was still unsure about his monarch core. Although he has thousands of cores and bodies, he was not sure if he could increase the rank of his monarch core to S. "And here I was thinking it wouldn't be difficult for me to wipe out the entire Dark Guild," Evan said with a bitter smile on his face. After his monarch core reached A rank, he really thought that it wouldn't be difficult for him to take care of the Dark Guild. Heck, he even started to feel that no one in the entire Aurora world could defeat him. But after hearing what happened inside the Inferno dungeon, and how Sarah was able to escape from him without even using her full power, he finally understood he was being arrogant. And no one can blame him for that. After all, even while facing the army of millions of spiders, he was easily able to kill all of them. "Let's stop thinking about it and get back to business." Evan cheered him up and sat down on his bed. "I just need to increase the rank of my cores, and I should be able to face them." Evan looked inside his shadow storage, and his mood immediately improved. He thought about absorbing the cores to improve the rank of his prime core, but suddenly he noticed the body of a certain monster inside his shadow storage. When Evan saw the body of this monster, his eyes flashed and he stood up. Ever since I received the growth link skill, I really wanted to try it out. Now that I have some free time before Kazal comes back. Evan muttered after standing up and made up his mind. He came before the window of his room and left the hotel using his shadow wings. Chapter 502. After exiting the hotel room, Evan left the central city and went into the wilderness once again. Currently, the central city was on very high alert because of what happened during the tournament, and no one was allowed to leave the city. But Evan was easily able to leave the city because of his connection with Nathan and Sebastian. After leaving the city, he first flew for a few thousand kilometers, and after confirming no one was following him, he finally landed at the top of one of the mountains. There were a few low-level monsters at the top of the mountain, but all of them ran away the moment they saw Evan. The reason Evan came to the wilderness was because he wanted to rearrange his shadow army. Currently, he has many useless shadow undeads, especially the spiders. Other than 109 A+ rank spiders, Evan unsaved all the other shadow spiders in his army. After unsaving them, Evan looked inside his shadow storage and took out the body of a monster. The monster that he took out from his shadow storage was not Titan Elephant, nor it was Stone Buffalo. The monster he took out was a D+ rank Goblin King that he killed inside the small world during the tournament. Evan wanted to see what would happen if he turned it into a shadow undead. The racial limit of the goblins is just D+ rank, and they cannot progress after reaching to D+ rank no matter what. But because of his growth link skill, Evan can easily ignore their racial limit. Among the goblins, Goblin Kings are famous for their alchemy. I wonder if this Goblin King will turn into a super smart alchemist after becoming a shadow undead. Evan thought out loud and used his shadow resurrection skill on the Goblin King. Shadow energy moved from his monarch core and went inside the body of the Goblin King. Evan was closely monitoring the consumption of his shadow energy. Because the Goblin King was not a normal D+ rank monster, he wanted to see how much shadow energy he would lose after using shadow resurrection on it. And after seeing the amount of shadow energy that he consumed, Evan was completely shocked. Holy sh*t, he couldn't help but suck a breath of cold air. No one could blame him because the shadow energy that he just used was enough to turn 5A rank monsters into shadow undeads. The Goblin King was just a D+ rank monster, several levels below the A rank, but the shadow energy that it requires was clearly off the charts. Seeing the large amount of shadow energy going inside the Goblin King, Evan could not help but feel excited. He felt like this time he was really going to get something good. As the shadow energy seeped inside Goblin King, its body started to shake. Just in case the body bursts due to too much shadow energy, Evan created a wind barrier around himself. But nothing like that happened, and soon a shadow undead that was looking like a weak goblin came out from the Goblin King's body. The shadow undead of the Goblin King was looking very normal. There was nothing special about it. But Evan didn't say anything because he was waiting for the main show to begin. Your growth link skill activated. The rune of evolution that was engraved on his chest lit up, and the shadow undead of the Goblin King suddenly started to shake. It was the first time Evan used shadow resurrection on someone who was bound by racial limits, so even he was not sure what would happen next. Bang! Suddenly a booming sound echoed out, and the shadow undead of the Goblin King started to deform. Its body wrapped and twisted, then turned into a puddle of black water. Evan was shocked when he saw this because he could not understand what was happening. Just as the shadow undead of the Goblin King turned into a puddle of black water, a notification flashed before Evan's eyes. The shadow undead of the Goblin King is evolving. Right parenthesis. The puddle of black water that the Goblin King turned into started to shake. The aura around the black water was at D+ rank in the beginning, but soon it started to rise. C rank, E+ rank, E rank, peak of A rank. In just a few seconds, the aura around the black water reached the peak of A rank. Evan looked at everything without blinking his eyes. After the aura around the puddle of black water reached the peak of A rank, it started to take the shape of a new shadow undead. Don't tell me, just like Albelu, this Goblin King also evolved into a new species. Evan muttered in a low voice. inside the small world. After eating the blood lightning pomegranate, Albelu evolved into a blood lightning wolf that is completely different from a normal lightning wolf. And now looking at what was happening with the Goblin King, Evan thought that it was also evolving into a new species. Huo. Woo. Suddenly Evan started to hear some voices. Soon he noticed strange entities with deformed faces and twisted limbs started to appear around the shadow undead that was taking the shape. When Evan saw those strange entities, he felt all hairs on his body stand up. What the F*** are these things? Evan muttered in a barely audible voice. He was not afraid of those strange entities, because he could tell they were just some kind of illusion, but looking at their deformed bodies still chilled his heart. As he was wondering just what kind of evolution the Goblin King was undergoing, a large amount of mana moved, and the shadow undead that was taking shape started to absorb it. This process lasted for 1 minute, before the shadow undead finally stopped absorbing mana, and revealed its body in front of Evan. But when Evan saw the body of the new Goblin King, he instinctively took a step back and looked at it with his eyes wide open. At the same time, a notification flashed before his eyes. The shadow undead of your Goblin King successfully evolved into Eldritch Goblin. Chapter 503. The shadow undead of your Goblin King successfully evolved into Eldritch Goblin. Ho! Woo! Just as this notification appeared, the sounds of strange entities with twisted bodies and deformed limbs that was circling around the new shadow undead of the Goblin King increased. An ancient and sinister aura instantly covered the entire mountain range where Evan was standing. The monsters who were present on the mountain started to roar in madness, like they were being affected by the strange aura, and started to fight against each other. The peaceful mountain range instantly became chaotic the moment the Goblin King's shadow undead evolved into Eldritch Goblin. Evan didn't seem to care about the monsters who started to fight against each other, as his eyes and mind were fixed on the shadow undead of the Eldritch Goblin. He had no words to describe its appearance! It was just too strange. Its body shape was a bit similar to the Goblin King, but unlike the Goblin King, it was 3 meters tall. Its face was clean without any eyes, mouth or nose. It had a pot belly that was filled with eerie-looking purple eyes. There were at least 10 eyes on its pot belly. At the top of its head, one could see 2 mouths and a short horn. From the back of the Eldritch Goblin, 6 deformed arms were coming out. The only thing that was normal about the Eldritch Goblin was its legs, which was still looking like a normal Goblin King. When Evan looked at the purple burning eyes on the Eldritch Goblin's pot belly, he could vaguely see all of them were swirling and were fixed on him. Evan couldn't help but gulp down his saliva when he felt those strange eyes were fixed on him. While Evan was still assessing his new shadow undead, the Eldritch Goblin took a step forward. Just as the Eldritch Goblin took a step forward, the ancient aura and the strange entities that were circling around it disappeared. Evan was still shocked because of its strange appearance when the Eldritch Goblin knelt down in front of him. The 2 mouths at the top of its head opened at the same time, and a voice that was neither male nor female came out from them. "Greeting, Master." Evan was taken aback and came back to his senses after hearing the voice of Eldritch Goblin. At the same time, he was quite surprised because he didn't expect the Goblin to get the ability to speak after evolving. Even after evolving into a blood lightning wolf, Albelu didn't get the ability to speak, so he thought the Eldritch Goblin would be the same. Looks like the evolution of the Goblin King is really not simple, Evan thought to himself, and took a deep breath. He opened his mouth and wanted to say something, but realized he don't know what to say. Should he say good to see you? Oh, please, who would feel good after seeing a pot belly full of strange eyes and a body with twisted limbs? What are you? In the end, he couldn't help but ask the question that came into his mind. Although he knew the chances of Eldritch Goblin knowing about its origin were low, he still wanted to ask. Surprisingly, after hearing Evan's question, the Eldritch Goblin actually answered him. "Master, I can share with you the inherited knowledge that I gained after evolution." Inheritance knowledge. Evan raised an eyebrow when he heard the Eldritch Goblin. "Are you saying you received information about your new species after evolving?" "Yes." The Eldritch Goblin nodded its head. "Sure, tell me about yourself." Evan had no reason to decline, so he nodded his head in anticipation. But the next thing that happened stunned him. The burning purple eyes that were present on the Eldritch Goblin's pot belly started to spin. When Evan saw those eyes, he felt something was invading his mind. He immediately wanted to use his spiritual power to stop it. but soon he felt new knowledge being transmitted to his mind directly. Feeling the flow of new knowledge, Evan soon realized what was happening and didn't use his spiritual power to resist it. If it was someone else, he would have never let them do anything with his mind. But since the Eldritch Goblin was his shadow undead, he was not worried that it would try to harm him. Soon a notification flashed before his eyes. You have received knowledge about Eldritch Goblin inheritance. Evan focused on the notification, and the information about Eldritch Goblin appeared before him. Origin. Eldritch Goblins are a mysterious and formidable breed of goblins that have been profoundly influenced by eldritch energies and otherworldly forces. Eldritch Goblins typically inhabit areas close to ancient, unstable portals or sites where the boundaries between dimensions are thin. These unstable portals often leak unstable energies. Exposure to these energies has warped normal goblins' bodies and minds, granting them supernatural abilities that allow them to break through their racial limit. Innate ability. Eldritch Goblins possess innate ability Eyes of the Abyss. Eyes of the Abyss. The eyes of the Eldritch Goblins are their most striking feature, with pupils resembling swirling voids. This grants them the ability to see beyond the normal spectrum of light, allowing them to perceive hidden truths and magical auras. The Eyes of Abyss also help them to find the boundaries of the dimensions that are influenced by the Eldritch energy. In rare cases, some Eldritch Goblin might be able to awaken new abilities of Eyes of the Abyss. Current known habitat of Eldritch Goblin's Tomb of the Ancient. Evan read everything with a serious expression on his face. When he read about ancient portals and boundaries of dimensions, he couldn't help but gasp in shock. From what he understood after reading this, it seems like Eldritch Goblins were also normal goblins. But because of the influence of the energies that leak from these portals, normal goblins were able to break free from their racial limit and evolved into Eldritch Goblins. When Evan read about the Eye of the Abyss, he didn't understand much about it, so he decided to ask the shadow undead of the goblin later. Tomb of the Ancient. Evan raised an eyebrow when he read the name of this place. He felt like he heard this name somewhere before. He tried to remember where he heard the name of this place, and it did not take him long to remember. Oh right, the information orb that Valerie and I found inside the ruins of the Frost World dungeon, Evan said out loud when he remembered. Chat-101. According to that information orb, the Tomb of Ancient is a special realm that opens every 10 years or so. Evan muttered to himself, looking at the shadow undead of the Eldritch Goblin. The Tomb of Ancient is located in the higher world. Does it mean the Eldritch Goblin is a monster from the higher world? Evan took a deep breath and tried to control his excitement. He used the second effect of the growth link skill and looked at the skills of Eldritch Goblin. Chapter 504. Let's see what kind of skills this bad guy has, Evan muttered and used the second effect of his growth link skill to see the details of Eldritch Goblin's skills. Mind intrusion. Using this skill, you can delve into the minds of others, extracting memories or implanting false thoughts. The skill wouldn't work if the target is 2 levels above you. Just after reading the details of the first skill, Evan couldn't help but suck a breath of cold air. Although this skill was looking quite normal, it was anything but normal. What does it mean to be able to extract memories or implant false thoughts? It means that just by using this skill, his Eldritch Goblin can literally manipulate anyone who is not 2 levels above it. It just has to extract someone's original memories, and then implant new thoughts, and that person's personality would completely change. For example, it can just extract someone's original memory, and then implant the false thoughts that they were born to serve it. Just by doing this, it would be able to make anyone its slave. Heck, it can even implant the thoughts that it is their father, and they are his children. But suddenly Evan thought about the appearance of Eldritch Goblin and deleted his last thought. Even by using this skill, it wouldn't be able to convince people that it is their father. Damn, just what kind of mind manipulation skill is this? Evan muttered with a wry smile on his face, and looked at other skills. Resilience, passive skill. Eldritch Goblins have an uncanny resistance to conventional magic and physical attacks. Their physiology makes them difficult to harm, and they can regenerate wounds over time. It also grants them 10% resistance against physical and magical damage. Eldritch Horror Dimensional Rift, unique skill. By using the Eldritch energy you can open a small rift to other planes of existence, allowing you to summon one Eldritch Horror for 30 minutes. The Eldritch Horror Dimensional Rift is highly unstable, and can be dangerous even for the Eldritch Goblin itself. Cooldown time, 4 hours. Madness induction. Merely being in your presence for extended periods can drive weaker people to madness due to the sheer otherworldly nature of your eldritch energy. When Evan saw the madness induction skill, he thought about what happened to monsters earlier. This skill is also a broken skill, Evan said to himself, thinking about what would happen if he used this skill in the middle of an army. His eldritch goblin is at the peak of A rank, and in Aurora World, there are not many people who are above the A rank. During a fight between two large armies, if his eldritch goblin uses its madness induction skill to affect one of the armies, it would be a game over for them. The moment they get affected by this skill, they will start fighting between themselves without caring about anything. Just thinking about the usage of this skill made Evan's blood boil in excitement. Void walking, unique skill. You have the ability to step partially into the void between dimensions for 3 seconds, granting you brief moments of invulnerability. During these 3 seconds, you can pass through solid objects and become immune to physical and magical harm, making you elusive and difficult to pin down. Cooldown time, 10 hours. Reality shifting. Locked, can't be used without the world essence. Limited temporal manipulation. Locked, can't be used without the world essence. Evan raised an eyebrow when he saw 2 skills of the Eldritch Goblin were locked. Just by reading their names, he could tell that both of these skills were not normal. Can't be used without the world essence. Evan muttered to himself and looked at the small amount of world essence that was within his core. I will try to use these skills with the help of the second effect of Growth Link skill. Currently, Evan has Sea Dragon's Roar and Prismatic Mirage skills that he borrowed from his Shadow Undeads, using the second effect of the Growth Link skill. There was still some time before he could use the second effect of Growth Link skill again, so he decided to check out these 2 skills later. Void walking is also a pretty good skill. It can essentially make my Eldritch Goblin invulnerable for 3 seconds after activating this skill, Evan said while sighing out loud. All the skills of the Eldritch Goblin were completely abnormal. Other than these skills, there were a few more skills, but they were not important. Like the skill called Eldritch Regeneration. Eldritch Regeneration. Your connection to Eldritch energies allows you to regenerate from injuries that would be fatal to others. Severe wounds heal rapidly, and even lost limbs can regrow over time. This skill was not very useful for the Shadow Undead of the Eldritch Goblin. Since it is a Shadow Undead, Evan could easily heal it using his mana. All the skills are perfect, but the skill Eldritch Horror Dimensional Rift is a bit eerie I guess. Although all of the Eldritch Goblin's skills were strange, they were not harmful to the caster. But the Eldritch Horror Dimensional Rift skill is different. Even in the details of the skill, it is mentioned that this skill can be harmful to the caster as well. Well, even if my Eldritch Goblin dies because of this skill, I can just summon it back, Evan said to himself. Besides, his eyes narrowed, and he looked at the Eldritch Goblin who was still kneeling in front of him. Only by using this skill, I can confirm my suspicion. Gobu, use your Eldritch Horror Dimensional Rift skill, Evan said, and flew away from there. By the way, Gobu was the name that Evan decided to give to his Eldritch Goblin. Gobu was quite happy to receive a name. The 2 mouths that were at the top of its head even smiled a little after it received its name. Once Evan was 1 kilometer away from it, Gobu activated its Eldritch Horror Dimensional Rift skill. The 6 deformed arms that were behind its back glowed with dark brown light. At the same time, a strange aura engulfed the large area of the wilderness. Evan's eyes trembled when he felt this aura, because the thing that he was afraid of really came true. Gobu did not care what Evan was thinking. It stretched forward its 6 deformed arms, and ripped apart the space in front of it, opening a 3-meter wide and 3-meter long rift that was filled with strange entities that Evan had seen earlier, when the Goblin King evolved. Woo-oh! Suddenly a loud strange sound came from the dimensional rift, and all the strange entities that were inside it disappeared. Just as they disappeared, 5 dark brown eyes opened inside the rift, and a powerful aura that even gave Evan a sense of danger covered the wilderness. Chapter 505. Woo! With a strange roar, the Eldritch Horror summoned by Gobu came out from the dimensional rift. The Eldritch Horror was looking like an octopus, but it had 5 deep brown eyes, a mouth that was filled with grotesque-looking sharp teeth, and a body full of tentacles. The body of the Eldritch Horror was deep green in color, and it was 10 meters tall. Green smoke was continuously coming out from its body, and illusionary images of entities with deformed bodies were moving inside the green smoke. The rank of the Eldritch Horror was the same as Gobu. It was at the peak of A rank, but the dangerous feeling that it was giving was enough to put even an S rank hunter on alert. Evan looked at the Eldritch Horror for a few seconds and sighed out loud. So this guy really has it, Evan muttered and tousled his hair. To think Gobu would have energy similar to my shadow energy. In the details of the Eldritch Horror Dimensional Rift skill, it was mentioned that Gobu could use Eldritch energy to open a dimensional rift. It cannot use mana to open the dimensional rift. It needs to use Eldritch energy in order to open the rift. After reading it was Eldritch energy, Evan immediately thought about his shadow energy and world essence. At first, Evan thought that Eldritch energy would be something similar to world essence, and would be completely different from his shadow energy. After all, he received his shadow energy because of his monarch core. But when Gobu used the skill to open the rift, Evan immediately felt the difference between Eldritch energy and the world essence. Instead of world essence, the energy that Gobu used was more like his shadow energy, and the energy that he removed from Adam's soul orb yesterday. The reason Evan was irritated after knowing this was because, since Gobu can use energy similar to his shadow energy, the chances of other people using this kind of energy were also quite high. From the knowledge that I received from Gobu, I can tell Eldritch Goblin is a species of the higher world. Does it mean all the species that live in the higher world can use energy that is similar to my shadow energy? Evan muttered with a deep frown on his face. He was worried because if this is true, then it will be quite dangerous for him when he used the Tower of Ascension and goes to the upper world. Shadow energy is his strongest trump card, but if all the people living there can use energy similar to shadow energy, then he will lose one of the advantages. Now, I'm not even sure if the guy who killed Adam inside the Infern dungeon has the monarch physique or not. Since Gobu can use energy that has some similarities with shadow energy without a monarch physique, there is no reason that other people can't do the same. So now he was doubting if the person inside the Inferno dungeon had a monarch physique or not. Thinking about all of these things, Evan once again sighed and flew towards Gobu. Whoa! The Eldritch Horror roared towards Evan when it saw him. But the next second, all the eyes that were on Gobu's potbelly lit up, and the Eldritch Horror stopped roaring at Evan. Evan ignored the Eldritch Horror and came near Gobu, looking at its 6 deformed arms that was still glowing with Eldritch energy. After looking at the energy for a few seconds, Evan sighed in relief and nodded his head. Although this Eldritch energy is powerful than the world essence, I can feel my shadow energy is still stronger than it, Evan muttered to himself, and looked at the Eldritch Horror that was looking at him, like it wanted to eat him. It stopped roaring at him because of Gobu, but it was still looking at him with hostility. If not for the fact that it is a summoned monster, I would have turned it into a shadow undead, Evan thought inwardly, after seeing the hostile look of the Eldritch Horror. Since it was a summoned monster, Evan couldn't turn it into a shadow undead, because after dying, the body of the summoned monster would disappear. Cancel the summoning and send away this nuisance, Evan said to Gobu after seeing how Eldritch Horror was looking at him with hostility. Gobu accepted Evan's order and cancelled the summoning. Just as Gobu cancelled the summoning, the body of the Eldritch Horror started to disappear. At the same time, the summoning contract that was binding it with Gobu was also cancelled. Whoa! Before its body fully disappeared, the Eldritch Horror roared out loud and attacked Evan using its tentacles. Evan was taken aback by the sudden attack of the Eldritch Horror. He was about to move away to avoid the attack when suddenly Gobu jumped forward and grabbed all the tentacles of Eldritch Horror with its 6 arms. Gobu roared out loud after grabbing its tentacles and ripped them off from its giant body. Whoa! The Eldritch Horror roared out in pain, and soon its body disappeared. The tentacles that Gobu ripped off also disappeared, along with the rest of the Eldritch Horror's body. Evan looked at Gobu for a moment before his lips curled upwards. I guess I'm thinking too much, Evan muttered to himself. So what if there are other people who can use the same energy as my shadow energy? As long as I keep increasing my strength, everything will be fine. Besides, Evan looked at his shadow undeads who were inside his shadow storage. It is not like I'm alone. These guys will always be there to help me. After sorting out his thoughts, Evan asked a few more things to Gobu, especially about the usage of its innate ability Eyes of the Abyss. After knowing the full usage of the Eyes of the Abyss, Evan was quite excited. I hit the lottery with this ability, Evan said out loud, barely surpassing his excitement after knowing the usage of Gobu's innate ability. Calm down, calm down. There are still a few things I need to take care of before I can take full advantage of this ability. Evan summoned back Gobu after knowing its full abilities, and started to check monsters' bodies inside his shadow storage to add new shadow undeads to his army. He first turned Titan Elephant and Stone Buffalo into shadow undeads. The condition of their bodies was not good, so Evan used soul absorption skill, and used thousands of souls as fuel, so that shadow resurrection wouldn't fail. Using soul absorption, he successfully turned them into shadow undeads. After them, he started to create new shadow undead to fill the numbers of his shadow army. He carefully selected shadow undeads that were best for him. While he was in the middle of organizing his shadow army, Evan received a message from Kazal. "I will be there soon," Evan said to Kazal and continued to organize his shadow undeads. After 3 more hours, he was finally done sorting out all the stuff. With this new setup, it will be easy for me to handle my shadow undeads in the future, Evan said to himself and looked at the sky, which was already beginning to darken. Let's go back and see how Kazal is doing. Evan used his shadow wings and flew back towards the central city. Chapter 506. Evan came back to his hotel room through the same window from which he left earlier. After arriving in the room, he saw Kazal standing in one of the corners. Evan looked at him for a moment before shifting his gaze to the unconscious person who was lying on the ground in front of Kazal. The person who was lying on the ground was the nameless host who was hosting the tournament. While coming back to Central City, Evan actually thought that the nameless host would definitely run away after receiving the news that he was safely able to escape from the Dark Guild. He asked Sebastian and Nathan about the details of this nameless host. Since this guy is an A+ rank hunter, Sebastian and Nathan were fully aware of him, and gave him all the information that he needed. According to them, this guy works for the Hunter Association, and if he wants to meet him, he should go Hunter Association building to look for him. Although Evan knew the chances were very low, he still sent Kazal to capture this guy. Surprisingly, even after knowing Evan was successfully able to escape from the Dark Guild, this guy still didn't run away from the city. After knowing he didn't run away, Kazal waited for him to come out from the Hunter Association building, and when he came out, Kazal caught him and brought him here. Man, finding a dark and abandoned warehouse in this age is not a simple task. Evan muttered in a low voice and walked towards the nameless host. Just like how people do in movies, he also wanted to bring the nameless host into a dark abandoned warehouse for interrogation, but realized it would be a pain in a*s to search for an abandoned warehouse, so he told Kazal to just bring him to his room. After coming closer, when Evan looked at the nameless host, he realized there were no injuries on his body. "How did you get him here without injuring him?" Evan asked in a curious voice. The nameless host is an A+ rank hunter, and an A+ rank hunter would definitely fight back if someone tried to kidnap him. But since Kazal was able to kidnap him without injuring him, this means the nameless host didn't even get the chance to fight back before he was knocked unconscious. Hearing Evan, Kazal didn't reply, and just showed him a classic karate chop. Evan's mouth couldn't help but twitch when he saw Kazal's karate chop. He also tried to knock out monsters using the karate chop in the past, but instead of knocking them unconscious, he directly broke their neck with his karate chop. He tried to control his strength many times, but he was never able to knock out any monster perfectly. Most of the monsters who faced his karate chop were directly sent to eternal sleep. Evan shook his head and decided to practice more before attempting to knock out someone using a karate chop. Elijah He summoned Elijah and asked her to wake up the nameless host. Elijah just waved her hand, and a white light struck the head of the nameless host. A painful grunt escaped from the mouth of the nameless host, and he slowly opened his eyes. Before the nameless host could understand his situation, Evan grabbed him by the neck and brought his face closer to him. "Don't even think about screaming, or I'll break your neck like a stick." Evan was still inside the hotel, and he wasn't sure if his room was soundproof or not. If the nameless host started screaming after waking up, it would be troublesome for him. The nameless host was scared sh*less and immediately nodded his head. Evan looked at him for a few seconds before letting him go. Cough. The nameless host gasped for breath and looked at Evan with horror-filled eyes. "What do you want?" "Huh?" Evan looked at the nameless host like he was looking at an idiot. "Do you seriously want to know what I want?" The nameless host did not reply to Evan, and just looked at him with an uncertain look on his face. "Actually, The reason he did not run away even after learning that Evan was coming back was because he thought that Evan did not know what he had done when he was being teleported away. He made his move the moment the teleportation formation was activated. He was so fast that even the S-rank hunters who were present in the stadium were not able to see him. So he thought Evan was the same and did not see him doing anything. Unfortunately for him, the moment formation was activated, Evan subconsciously used his temporal velocity skill, and because of this, he was clearly able to see everything. Look, I don't know what was your reason for acting against me, nor do I care about it. But if you don't start talking in the next 5 seconds, Evan said and showed him a smile that was not a smile. The nameless host shuddered when he saw Evan's smile, and immediately started to talk. According to him, Ronan, who is one of the vice presidents of the Hunter Association, asked him to act against him. There are a total of 5 vice presidents in the main branch of the Hunter Association. 2 of them are S-rank hunters, while 3 are at the peak of A+ rank, very close to reaching S rank. Ronan is an A+ rank hunter, and he is also very close to reaching S rank. The reason the nameless host agreed to help him was because Ronan told him that as long as he did what he said, he would help him reach S rank. At first, the nameless host rejected his offer because he knew the potential of his core was A+ rank, and it couldn't reach S rank. But Ronan promised him that he had a way to increase the potential of his core that would allow him to reach S rank. After hearing he could reach S rank, the nameless host did not hesitate and accepted his offer. When the nameless host stopped speaking, Evan couldn't help but look at him with weird eyes. His story was very similar to Oliver, who worked for Sarah because she also told him that she would help her reach the S rank. Ronan, huh? Evan muttered with a deep frown on his face. He closed his eyes for a moment and thought about all the information that he received from Kazal, Mist Spider, Titan Elephant and Stone Buffalo. After organizing all the information, he finally got what he wanted. Now I am 99% sure who is the person behind all this, Evan said and looked at the nameless host who was sitting on the ground quietly. You know, normally I would have killed you after getting the information that I wanted, but you are in luck because I have a different task for you, Evan said and waved his hand. The next second, nameless host's eyes widened in horror as a strange monster with a deformed body appeared in front of him. But of course, before giving you the task, I must make sure that you will not betray me, and will complete the task perfectly, Evan said, and sent a mental command to Gobu. Chapter 507. Do you understand? Evan asked, looking at the nameless host. Yes, Master. The nameless host nodded his head with a serious expression. Even though he was not a shadow undead, he was still looking at Evan with eyes full of reverence. Good. I hope you won't disappoint me. Evan nodded and signaled him to leave. Don't worry, Master. I will definitely complete the task that you gave me, the nameless host said in a solemn voice, and left the hotel room through the window. Evan looked at the nameless host for a moment before shaking his head. This skill is really broken, Evan muttered and glanced at Gobu who was standing beside him. Mind intrusion. Using this skill, you can delve into the minds of others, extracting their memories or implanting false thoughts. The skill wouldn't work if the target is 2 levels above you. Using its skill mind intrusion, Gobu implanted the false thoughts inside the nameless host's mind. Now the nameless host was completely loyal to Evan, and wouldn't even hesitate to kill himself if Evan asked him to. But of course, Evan had no plans of killing him, at least not for now. Now I need to deal with the Phantom Organization and the person who hired them, Evan said while rubbing his chin. But soon he shrugged his shoulders and left his hotel room. Well, it would have been a little hard to find the people of the Phantom Organization and the person who hired them. But now that I have Gobu with an incredible innate ability like Eyes of Abyss, it would be a piece of cake to find the person who hired the Phantom Organization. I just need to wait for a bit before Sebastian and Nathan sort out their things, Evan said as he walked towards the training area of the hotel room. He can increase the rank of his Prime Core immediately because he has enough resources, but his Monarch Core advanced to A rank less than 3 days ago. Although he fought against millions of monsters after increasing his rank, he was mostly using his skills to kill them. His control over his physical strength was very poor. Each time he increases the rank of his Prime Core, his physical strength will be greatly enhanced. So before increasing his rank again, he wanted to get a good understanding of his current physical strength. When he reached the training area of the hotel, He did not see anyone there. Evan was not surprised when he saw no one was there. The hotel was reserved for the students who came to take part in the tournament. Half of the students were killed by Valerie inside the wildernesses when they sided with the Dark Guild, and the remaining students like Sophie and others were resting in their rooms. Evan went into one of the personal fields of the training area, where no one could see or disturb him. He locked the training field and used his spiritual senses to see if there was anything to spy on him. After confirming everything was fine, he summoned Adam and asked him to use gravity manipulation to increase the gravity of the entire training field. Although his physical strength was off the charts, Evan still felt the pressure of gravity when Adam used his skill to its full power. He could have used mana to completely offset the effect of the gravity, but then it would have been meaningless. Evan spent the next 3 days inside the training room. Other than trying to control his power, he also sparred against Stone Buffalo, Elijah, and Kazal. In order to not destroy the training room during the spar, Evan asked Snow, Earth Wyvern and Stone Buffalo to reinforce the training room. Because of their reinforcement, the training room was barely able to handle his training. During these 3 days, the staff and the students who were staying inside the hotel experienced many earthquakes. Of course, although he was immersed in his training, Evan kept an eye on the affairs of the outside. After discussing with everyone, the authorities decided to cancel this year's tournament. The reason for this was very simple. There were not enough people to participate in the tournament. After what happened in the wilderness, most of the students were dead. When Evan heard about the news of the tournament being cancelled, he did not care too much about it. Since the beginning of the tournament, he was not interested in it. He took part in it because of Sarah, and now that he knows her identity and has a general idea of where he can find her, he was fine with it. Another thing that happened was that Damien really escaped from Nephilim City. He received this news from Nathan. Although Evan already expected that guy to run away, he still felt it was a pity. He was hoping that just like Nameless Host, that guy would also decide to not escape from the city. Clank. The door of the training field that Evan had occupied for the past 3 days finally opened, and he walked out from it with a satisfied look on his face. Now I can increase the rank of my corps again, and it would not cause any problem for me, Evan thought to himself as he proceeded toward his room. When the staff of the hotel saw Evan coming out from the training field, all of them were overjoyed. For the past 3 days, they were afraid that their hotel would collapse because of his training. But now that he was out, they could finally breathe easy. Evan felt puzzled when he saw how the staff of the hotel was overjoyed after seeing him. Although he was curious about their behavior, he did not think too much about it, and moved towards his room. But before he could reach to his room, he received a message. Evan raised an eyebrow when he saw it was the message from Sebastian. He opened the message and read its content. But just after reading the first 2 lines, his steps halted and his eyes opened wide in shock. Chapter 508. As the bus was moving towards Central City Airport, Evan was looking out of the window of the bus thoughtfully. Sebastian was sitting beside him and was looking at his phone screen with a heavy look. Not only Sebastian, Valerie, Sophie and all the other students who were present on the bus with them were looking at their phone screens. On the phone screen, a video was being played showing hunters who were fighting against monsters. But unlike normal fights that happened inside the dungeon or wilderness, this fight was taking place inside the city. Homes and buildings were being destroyed and people could be seen running away from the fighting scene. Do you think this will be okay? Evan asked, still looking out the window. We had talked to Ron just half an hour ago. Although the situation is not good, according to him, they can hold off the monsters for 2 more days. Sebastian replied without taking his eyes off the phone screen. Thousands of normal people will die, right? Evan turned his head and looked at Sebastian. Sebastian paused for a moment before nodding heavily. Dad, shouldn't we also go to Nephilim City to support them? Valerie, who was sitting behind them, asked. Just a few minutes ago, she was resting in her room when she suddenly saw the news of several dungeon outbreaks happening inside Nephilim City. According to the news, there were outbreaks of 2A rank, 5B rank, and many other C and lower rank dungeons. At first, she did not believe the news, thinking it was a prank, as she had never heard of so many outbreaks happening at the same time. But she was completely shocked when she received confirmation about it from Sebastian. Tens of dungeon outbreaks really happened inside the Naflium city at the same time. No one expected such a sudden accident, and thousands of people died just after the beginning of the outbreak. Although the authorities reacted quickly, they are still having a very hard time controlling the outbreaks. The current power of Naflium City was all-time low. Amanda was killed by Damien, and Damien himself ran off somewhere. Without the top powerhouses of the city, the current situation of Naflium City was even more dire than the monster tide. Currently, Ron was the only S-rank hunter inside the Naflium City. Along with other hunters of the city, he was trying his best to resist the monsters. Authors not /n. I mentioned the Ron in chat. 299. Nathan and a few other high-ranking hunters are going there. There is no need for us to go there. Sebastian shook his head when he heard Valerie's question. All the dungeons where the outbreak happened were under the control of the White Shark Guild, right? Evan asked Sebastian using telepathy. Sebastian sighed and replied positively. Evan couldn't help but curse under his breath. It was not difficult for him to understand what was going on. Damien was the guild master of the White Shark Guild, and since he was working with the Dark Guild, it wouldn't be strange for him to get his hands on a few bottles of fetid miasma. Without the effect of fetid miasma, it's impossible for so many dungeon outbreaks to occur at the same time for no reason. Evan sighed inwardly and couldn't help but think about how easily people can change. Just 2 or 3 months ago, Damien was fighting against monsters to save the people of the Naflium city, but in such a short period of time, he completely changed, and now is trying to destroy the same city that he was protecting. Evan shook his head and looked at Sebastian's phone screen, which was still showing the situation of the Naflium city. I understand Nathan and a few high-ranking hunters are going to Naflium city to provide support, but don't you think it would be better if we also go there? After all, extra help is always welcome. Evan asked Sebastian using telepathy. We can't go there. Sebastian shook his head hearing Evan. Currently, Margaret is the only S-rank hunter inside a Start City. If something similar happens in a Straight City, it will be another disaster. That's why we are going back to a Straight City. Evan pondered for a moment before nodding his head. Actually, there was another reason that Sebastian did not talk about. There is no S-rank dungeon inside Naflium City. All the S-rank dungeons that are near Naflium City are situated outside of the city. But a Straight City is different. There are 3 S-rank dungeons inside the Straight City. If by any chance, Dark Guild successfully causes dungeon outbreaks in those 3 dungeons, it would be a complete disaster for a Start City. This is also the reason why Nathan and Sebastian decide not to let Evan go to Naflium City. Although they did not want to admit it, both of them knew that they were weaker than Evan, even though he was still just an A-rank hunter. If the Dark Guild successfully causes outbreaks in those 3 dungeons, they know it will be difficult for them to stop it without his help. After going back, I also need to deal with the people who were close to Brutus. Sebastian rubbed his temples and sighed inwardly. Soon the bus reached the airport. There were many planes that were ready to take off. Sophie and the students of the Clear Sky Academy went into the plane that was going to Naflium City. They were going with Nathan and the other hunters. The students of the other academies boarded the plane that was going to their city. Evan thought for a moment and decided to send Kazal to Naflium City. He asked Kazal to use stealth and sit on the roof of the plane. He was sending Kazal because he wanted to keep an eye on the situation in Naflium City, and Kazal could also protect Sophie and others if necessary. After saying goodbye to them, Evan boarded the plane that was going to a Straight City. When Evan entered the plane, he noticed some of the hunters of the guilds that came with them to the central city were also present there. Seeing them, Evan thought about the person who used the enfabling curse on him. It is the perfect time to use Gobu's Eyes of Abyss innate ability. Evan thought to himself as he sat down on one of the empty seats. Chapter 509. After sitting in the plane, Evan thought about his conversation with Gobu. Even after talking to Gobu about his powers, the Eldritch Goblins were still quite mysterious to Evan. For example, Evan still can't understand Gobu's Eldritch Horror Dimensional Rift skill. He knew Gobu needed to use Eldritch Energy in order to use this skill. But the question was from where Gobu was receiving his Eldritch Energy. When Evan asked Gobu from where he was receiving his Eldritch Energy, Gobu's answer was, I don't know. Evan was baffled hearing Gobu's answer, and when he asked a few more questions, Gobu told him something quite interesting. According to Gobu, he can't use his eldritch energy freely like Evan. Evan can use his shadow energy to activate all of his skills. He can use it to reinforce his body, just like mana reinforcement and many more. But Gobu can't do these kinds of things with his eldritch energy. His eldritch energy can only be used to activate the Eldritch Horror Dimensional Rift skill. Other than activating this skill, he can't use his eldritch energy for anything else. Whenever he uses the Eldritch Horror Dimensional Rift skill, all of the eldritch energy inside his body will disappear, and will automatically recover after the cooldown time of the Eldritch Horror Dimensional Rift skill ends. Even after wrecking his brain to find the answer, Evan was still not sure why there was such a difference between the usage of his shadow energy and Gobu's eldritch energy. There are still many things that he needs to find out about Gobu and his eldritch energy. Other than his eldritch energy, the second thing that caught Evan's attention was Gobu's Eyes of the Abyss. Eyes of the Abyss. The eyes of the eldritch goblins are their most striking feature, with pupils resembling swirling voids. This grants them the ability to see beyond the normal spectrum of light, allowing them to perceive hidden truths and magical auras. The Eyes of Abyss also help them to find the boundaries of the dimensions that are influenced by the eldritch energy. In rare cases, some eldritch goblin might be able to awaken new abilities of Eyes of the Abyss. Evan can't think of many ways to use the Eyes of the Abyss, but the current him only cares about two things. First, the ability to perceive hidden truths and magical auras. Using this ability, Gobu can easily detect any kind of hidden formation, the density of the elements in the surroundings, precious materials and herbs that look ordinary, but are incredibly rare. Other than these, Gobu can easily search for monsters in the wilderness, because of its ability to detect magical auras. Although all of these things were quite useful, the thing that interested him the most was something else. Using the ability to perceive hidden truths, Gobu can detect the emotions of other people. According to him, no matter how much anyone tries to hide their emotions, he can still sense them using his ability. After knowing Gobu can detect the emotions of others, Evan immediately thought about using this to find the person who used the enfibling curse on him. Since that person used a curse on him, his emotions towards him would definitely be negative. There were not many people present inside the plane when that person used the enfibling curse on him, so he was sure it wouldn't be difficult for him to find that person using this ability. But finding the person who used the curse on him was Evan's second priority. After knowing about the abilities of Eyes of the Abyss, the first thing that he thought about after knowing the abilities of the Eyes of the Abyss was to go inside the dungeons and look for ruins that are hidden inside them. Gobu can sense the boundaries of dimensions that are influenced by eldritch energy, but he can also sense the boundaries of normal dimensions that are not influenced by eldritch energy. He can sense the dimensions that are influenced by eldritch energy, even if he is a few kilometers away from them. But in order to sense the normal dimensions, he needs to be within 50 meters range of them. There are two types of ruins that a person can find inside a dungeon. The first one is similar to the ruin that he saw inside the Frost World dungeon. These kinds of ruins are hidden inside the dungeon. Gobu can search for them by perceiving the hidden magical aura of these ruins. I think you should take a look at. The second type of ruins are the ruins that are hidden inside different dimensions within the dungeon. For example, the ruin that Evan found inside the Verdant Wilds dungeon. That ruin was hidden inside a different dimension. So for current him, the two uses of Eyes of the Abyss are to find the person who used the curse on him and search for ruins inside the dungeons. Evan looked at the people who were already present inside the plane, and saw other than 2 or 3 people who followed Nathan, most of the people who came with them from a straight city were there and were going back with them. Evan, Valerie and others were last to arrive, so when they sat down, the plane immediately took off. After the plane took off, Evan's black eyes suddenly changed and turned a light shade of purple. If someone looks closely at his eyes, they would notice Evan's pupils were looking like swirling voids. That's right, Evan was using Gobu's innate ability Eyes of the Abyss. The Eyes of the Abyss is Gobu's innate ability. It is not a skill that Evan can use through the second effect of the Growth Link skill. Then how Evan was able to use Eyes of the Abyss? The answer was actually quite simple. In the details of Eyes of the Abyss, It was mentioned that in rare cases, eldritch goblins might be able to awaken new abilities of Eyes of the Abyss, and Gobu was the same. It awakened a new ability of the Eyes of the Abyss. Using this ability, he can share Eyes of the Abyss with Evan. Just as Evan used the Eyes of the Abyss, his vision changed. The mana that was present in his surroundings became visible. When he looked around, he noticed he could even see the elements moving around him. Evan looked at Sebastian, who was sitting beside him, and saw a vast amount of magical aura coming out from his body. He also looked at the magical aura of other people, and noticed their aura was weaker than Sebastian's. After getting used to his new vision, Evan finally took a deep breath and tried to sense the emotions of other people following Gobu's instructions. He tried it on Sebastian, and after a few seconds, he could sense Sebastian's emotions towards him. Although his emotions are not particularly good, and he wants to beat me up for some reason, I am at least sure he doesn't want to harm me, Evan thought to himself after feeling Sebastian's emotions towards him. One by one, Evan started to feel the emotions of other people towards him. The emotions most of the people who were present on the plane were neutral towards him, and Evan was not surprised after seeing this. After a minute, his eyes suddenly stopped on two men. These two are, Evan thought for a moment, and after recalling the identity of these two people, he finally understood why he could feel negative emotions from these two people. They are from the Changes and New Dawn guilds, and both of these guilds are working for the Dark Guild, Evan thought, and narrowed his eyes. He took a deep breath and looked at other people. Suddenly his eyes paused on a certain person, and Evan felt a huge amount of negative emotions coming out from him. Because of his Eyes of the Abyss, he can even feel a huge amount of killing intent that this person was hiding. So he is the one who used the enfibling curse on me hard just by feeling the sea of negative emotions and the huge amount of killing intent. Evan could tell this guy was the one who used the enfibling curse on him. Chapter 510. A day and a half later, Evan and the others returned to Astrait City. While leaving the airport of Astrait City, Evan contacted Kazal using shadow sensors and asked about their situation. According to Kazal, it would still take them 8 or 9 hours to reach Naflium City. Evan was not surprised after knowing they were still on the way to Naflium City, because the distance between the Central City and the Naflium City was greater than the distance between Astrait City and Central City. After exiting the airport, most of the people of the guilds immediately left from there. Evan looked at the two people who were from New Dawn and Changes, but didn't do anything. You can come tomorrow to pick up your S-rank armor, Sebastian said, and was about to leave with Valerie when Evan stopped him. I need to talk to you about something. Sebastian stopped and looked at him. After seeing Evan's serious expression, he nodded his head and signaled Valerie to leave first. Valerie felt a little sour when Sebastian asked her to leave, because she also wanted to hear what they were going to talk about. But she didn't make a fuss about it and quietly left. Before Valerie left, Evan gave her his Blazabringer gauntlets and asked her if she could ask the blacksmith who made them to repair them. So what do you want to talk about? Sebastian asked after Valerie left. I told you that I know all the bases of the Dark Guild. Do you remember? Don't tell me. Sebastian suddenly thought about something and his face turned serious. Seeing Sebastian's expression, Evan nodded his head. That's right. There are 4 guilds inside the Astrait City that are working for the Dark Guild. Sebastian took a deep breath and signaled Evan to continue. Seeing he was listening, Evan told him about all the 4 guilds that were working for the Dark Guild. Among the 4 guilds, 2 guilds who were working for the Dark Guild were of silver rank and 2 were of bronze rank. The 2 silver rank guilds were Changes and Revolution. Changes was recently promoted to the silver rank guild, but Revolution was quite old and was very close to being promoted to gold rank guild. The bronze rank guilds were New Dawn and Final Strike. Both of these guilds were quite old and were on the verge of being promoted to silver rank. Are you sure? Sebastian took a deep breath and asked with clenched fists. Sebastian's hatred for the Dark Guild was even higher than before, after knowing Amanda was killed by them, and they even caused so many dungeon outbreaks in Naflium City. You can rest assured of the validity of my information. It cannot be wrong in any way, Evan said in a voice full of confidence. Sebastian nodded his head and fell into deep thought. After a minute of consideration, he looked at Evan. What are you planning to do? Let's wipe them out, Evan said in a flat voice, because, in his eyes, there was no need to show any kind of mercy to the people of the Dark Guild. Sebastian's mouth couldn't help but twitch when he heard Evan. but he didn't refute him immediately. Are all the people who are members of these guilds working for the Dark Guild? Sebastian asked the most important question because he didn't want to kill any innocent for no reason. I am not sure about everyone, but the leaders of these 4 guilds are definitely people of the Dark Guild. If you want, I can take care of these 4 guilds by myself, and I can promise you I will not kill anyone innocent. Sebastian looked at Evan for a few seconds and rubbed his temples. The entire city will become chaotic if you wipe out 4 guilds at the same time, you know. I know, but these guilds are nothing more than tumors. The sooner we remove them, the better, Evan said in a cold voice. Sebastian once again sighed after hearing Evan because he knew he was right. Are you sure, yo? Forget it. Just make sure you don't kill innocent. I will take care of the aftermath. Sebastian wanted to ask if Evan could deal with 4 guilds alone, but stopped after remembering about his shadow army. I think you should take a look at. A smile finally appeared on Evan's face after hearing Sebastian, and he nodded his head. When do you plan to take care of them? There are many things I need to do, so I will finish them off tonight, Evan said, looking at the shining sun. All right, let me know before you start. Sure, Evan nodded and was about to leave when he suddenly thought about something. Actually, there are a few tumors in your guild as well, but I don't think I need to worry about them, right? Sebastian paused for a moment and smiled bitterly when he heard Evan. Don't worry, I will take care of them. Evan just nodded his head after hearing Sebastian and left from there. Although I know you'll take care of them. There's a tumor in your guild I'll have to deal with myself, Evan muttered in a low voice and used shadow wings to fly away from there. In mid-air, Evan released Eclipse and Adam from his shadow storage. Adam, kill the leaders of New Dawn, Final Strike, Changes and Revolution, and bring their bodies to me. Adam bowed after receiving Evan's order and left with Eclipse. The leaders of these 4 guilds were A-rank hunters. Killing them was not difficult for Eclipse and Adam, so he was not worried that they would fail. 2 hours later, in one of the hotels of a straight city, Evan was looking at the 4 dead bodies that Adam and Eclipse brought. Looks like they were weaker than I thought, Evan muttered to himself when Adam and Eclipse returned in just 2 hours. Evan did not turn them into shadow undeads immediately and put them away. He waited for 5 more hours, and when it was nighttime, he left the hotel. I am starting. Evan sent a message to Sebastian and put away his phone. He first took out the bodies of 4 leaders who were killed by Adam and Eclipse, and turned them into shadow undeads. He did not save their shadow undeads, because his shadow army was currently full, and there was no space in it. After turning them into shadow undeads, Evan summoned 40 more shadow undeads, and divided them into 4 groups of 10 each. The leader of the first group was Albelu, and there were 9 more A+ rank monsters in his group. The leader of the second group was Rocky, and there were 9 wyverns in his group. The leader of the third group was Alicia, and there were Adam, Olivia and 7 other monsters in her group. The leader of the last group was Miss Spider, and there were 9 A+ rank spiders in her group. After dividing them into 4 groups, Evan sent them to wipe out the 4 guilds. Albelu's group was going to wipe out Revolution. Miss Spider's group was going to wipe out Changes. Alicia's group was going to wipe out New Dawn. And Rocky's group was going to wipe out Final Strike. The 4 shadow undeads of the 4 leaders were going with them to confirm his shadow undeads would only kill the people of the Dark Guild. After telling them to finish the job in 1 hour, Evan let them go. After his shadow undeads left, Evan took a deep breath and looked in a certain direction. I should also move and take care of him, Evan muttered to himself and flew away from there. Chapter 511. After flying for a few minutes, Evan stopped above a relatively medium-sized house. He looked at the map on his phone before putting it away. Looks like this is the place, Evan muttered and used his spiritual senses to scan the entire house. Using his powerful spiritual senses, Evan was able to scan the entire house in just a few seconds and found his target. It's good that I came to the right place, Evan said to himself, and summoned 3 shadow undeads. The shadow undeads that he summoned were all at the peak of A rank, and were looking like butterflies. All 3 butterflies were 2 meters tall in size, and there were 4 wings on their backs. These butterflies were called the Sonic Butterflies. They were with the monster armies of the Stone Buffalo and Titan Elephant. At that time these butterflies were just D rank, and were killed by his shadow undeads. When Evan saw their bodies, he immediately thought about making them his shadow undeads, because of one of their skills. Sonic barrier. You can create an invisible soundproof barrier that can trap your enemies. Inside the sonic barrier, space will be confined, which will make it harder for your enemies to run away using teleportation skills. After Sarah escaped from him using the escape scroll, Evan desperately wanted to get a skill that could help him stop the people from running away using teleportation type skills. So when he saw the bodies of these sonic butterflies among the monsters, he did not hesitate to add them to his shadow army. Use sonic barrier and lock this entire area, Evan said to his 3 shadow undeads, who immediately spread in the surroundings. After making some distance from each other, all 3 of them flapped their wings, and invisible sound waves started to cover the entire area. Although Evan couldn't see the sound barrier that was being deployed, he could feel the space around him was confined by a strange force. A barrier created by 3 peak A rank sonic butterflies is really powerful, but Evan muttered and snapped his fingers. Just as he snapped his fingers, the wind started to move, and a wind barrier also covered the surroundings. Now it should be fine, Evan nodded his head after creating the wind barrier, and looked down at the house. Hey, I am sure you already felt the mana fluctuations. Why are you not coming out? Evan said in a normal voice that resounded throughout the sonic barrier. Clank. Suddenly the door of the house opened, and a young man with black hair and blue eyes walked out from it. Evan smiled lightly when he saw the man and nodded his head in greeting. It's been a while, Isak. Isak didn't respond to Evan and looked at his surroundings, which was covered in wind barrier and sonic barrier. What are you doing here? After inspecting his surroundings, Isak finally looked at Evan and asked, What am I doing here? Evan blinked a few times, seemingly not understanding Isak's question. But then suddenly his eyes lit up and he started laughing in embarrassment. Sorry to bother you in the middle of the night, but you see, I have recently started a food delivery business, and I came here to deliver an order that I received recently. Food delivery? Isak frowned when he heard Evan. Yes, food delivery. Evan nodded his head. Do you need to seal the entire area in order to deliver food? Isak asked with a sneer on his face. Of course, I need to seal the entire area. What if the person ordering the food tries to run away without paying after receiving the food? Evan said with a serious expression on his face. Author's note, writing this because of a personal experience. Isak's mouth couldn't help but twitch when he heard Evan, and he replied in a cold voice, You are at the wrong address. I did not order anything. Wrong address. Evan raised an eyebrow in confusion. He took out a small paper, and after looking at it for a moment, he shook his head. You are lying. This is the correct address. The name of the customer is Isak, and I am here to deliver the cold dish called revenge. Isaac's face darkened hearing Evan, and a white spear appeared in his hand. How did you find out? Isak asked after taking out his spear. The moment he saw Evan, he already knew Evan was not here to deliver the food. The reason he talked to him for so long was because he was checking the surroundings to see if there was anyone else other than Evan. Evan also knew Isak was trying to check the surroundings, but he did not care about it. It doesn't matter how I found out, right? After all, even if I tell you, you are still going to die today, Evan said while shrugging his shoulders. Aren't you overconfident? I'm an A+ ranked hunter while you reached A rank just a few days ago. Do you think you can kill me? Isak said in a mocking voice. Is this guy for real? Evan looked at Isak with a speechless look. He really wanted to know from where this guy was getting his confidence from. After his 3 days of training, Evan's control over his power increased quite a bit. Although he did not want to brag, he was sure that even without using any of his skills, he could kill Isak in 2 or 3 moves, just by using his physical strength. Before I show you whether or not I'm overconfident, can you tell me why you want to kill me? Evan asked after a moment of silence. I know you're not part of the Dark Guild, so what was the reason you hired those assassins to kill me? Hearing Evan, a sneering smile appeared on Isak's face, and he pointed his spear toward him. Even if you kill me, I am not going to tell you the reason. Evan was once again speechless, but soon an amused smile appeared on his face. He suddenly disappeared from the sky, and Isak heard something that made his heart turn cold. Well, it's okay if you won't tell me. After all, for me, dead men tell all the tales. Chapter 512. Well, it's okay if you won't tell me. After all, for me, dead men tell all the tales. Evan said in a low voice and suddenly disappeared from the sky. Isak just felt his safety artifact activated, and a light blue barrier covered his entire body. But before he could understand why his artifact activated, poof! The blue barrier that was covering him burst like a water bubble, and a sense of impending doom engulfed him. Bang! The next second, a booming sound echoed out throughout the sonic barrier that shook the ground, and Isak was sent flying away like he was hit by a truck. Boom! Crack! Crack! His body crashed against the wind barrier that Evan created earlier, making giant ripples on it. Many of Isak's bones were broken, and the area around his chest was caved in. Cough. Isak started to cough out blood with his internal organs mixed in it, and his vision turned blurry. He tried to understand his situation, but the pain that was coming from all over his body made him unable to process what just happened in the last few seconds. He can't even handle 60% of my strength. Isak heard Evan's slightly disappointed voice, and saw him coming towards him with slow steps. Isak started to breathe heavily and tried his best not to pass out. He knew if he lost consciousness at this moment, he would never be able to open his eyes again. He used all of his willpower and took out a scroll from his storage ring. He was about to crush the scroll when suddenly his body stiffened. He tried everything in his power to move his body and crush the scroll, but no matter what he did, he couldn't even move his fingers. "So you also have this shitty scroll, huh?" Evan said in a neutral voice, after seeing the escape scroll that Isak took out. Isak wanted to ask why he couldn't move his body, but because of the effect of Shadow Nail skill, he was not even able to open his mouth. Evan looked at the escape scroll in Isak's hand for a moment and decided to test its effect. Although he was using the sonic barrier to bind the space, he was not sure how effective it was. In order to get a better understanding of the sonic barrier, he wanted to see its effect against the escaping scroll. But before testing the scroll, Evan muttered and waved his hand. Soon another shadow undead came out from his shadow storage. This shadow undead was just 50 centimeters big and was looking like a bat. "Use your marking skill on him," Evan said to the bat. The small bat looked at Isak, and its purple eyes glowed. A small beam of black light came out from its left eye and struck Isak's back. Just as the beam struck Isak, a skeleton mark appeared on his back. The skeleton mark shined for a moment before it completely disappeared. "Now even if he successfully escapes from here, I will still be able to find him," Evan said to himself and cancelled his Shadow Nail skill. Just as Evan cancelled his skill, the nails that were stopping Isak's body disappeared. When Isak felt he could move his body, he didn't hesitate and immediately crushed the scroll. Evan watched as Isak's entire body was covered in the silver light after he crushed the scroll. The space around the silver light wrapped and twisted, and the next second Isak disappeared from the place he was lying. But instead of feeling disappointed, Evan smiled and looked at his left side. Just as he looked at his left side, the space 20 meters away from him shook a bit, and with a flash, Isak appeared there. From the space fluctuations that were coming out from that scroll, he should have teleported at least 1,000 kilometers away. But because the space was bound by the sonic barrier, he was just able to teleport 20 meters away, Evan said in a delightful voice, and walked towards Isak, who was looking at his surroundings, with a face full of shock. "How is this possible?" Isak said in a voice full of horror and looked at Evan who was coming toward him. He dragged his body backwards, wanting to stay away from Evan. But Evan created a shadow nail and threw it towards Isak's shadow. Isak was not even able to follow the nail with his eyes before it struck his shadow. Just as the nail struck his shadow, a notification flashed before Evan's eyes. "Nightmare curse activated. Your target will fall into a nightmare illusion." Evan raised an eyebrow when he saw the notification, because he did not expect the nightmare curse effect of the shadow nail will activate. He looked at Isak and saw his eyes were hollow like his soul escaped from his body. "I wonder if this guy will be able to break free from the nightmare illusion," Evan muttered to himself, but he already knew about the result very well. Shadow Nails Dash. Using the power of the shadow, you can create 5 cursed nails at a time that can immobilize the target's body. When it hits the target's shadow, there is a 3% chance that the target will receive the nightmare curse after being immobilized by the shadow nail, and will fall into a nightmare illusion. If the target's soul power is not strong enough, he will not be able to leave the nightmare illusion, and upon losing his life in illusion, he will lose his life in reality as well. The power of the nightmare illusion depends on Evan's spiritual power, and his current spiritual power is something that even an S-rank hunter couldn't handle easily. Isak was just an A+ rank hunter who recently advanced to A+ rank. Moreover, he already lost his will to fight even before he entered the nightmare illusion. With a broken mentality, it was simply impossible for him to break free from the nightmare illusion. And not to Evan's surprise, after 3 minutes of falling inside the illusion, Isak's life aura completely disappeared. Evan did not show any kind of reaction when Isak died and put away his body in his shadow storage. He removed the wind barrier that he created earlier, and summoned back his shadow undeads. He looked at his surrounding that was mostly fine and was not destroyed even though he killed an A+ rank hunter. He praised himself for doing such a clean job, and left using his shadow wings. While flying back, he used his shadow senses, and looked at his 40 shadow undeads, whom he sent to destroy the 4 guilds. Chapter 513. Evan first looked at Albelu's group that was facing the Revolution Guild. Revolution Guild was very close to becoming a gold rank guild, and other than their leader that was killed by Adam and Eclipse, there were 2 more A-rank hunters in that guild. When Evan looked at Albelu's group through shadow senses, he saw a blood lightning dome that was covering the entire surroundings of the Revolution Guild, and his shadow undeads killing people that were pointed out by the shadow undead of the Revolution Guild's leader. The people that the leader of the Revolution Guild was pointing out were all the members of the Dark Guild. One of the 2 A-rank hunters was also part of the Dark Guild, and Albelu already killed him. Evan looked at the situation for a few seconds before he stopped looking at Albelu's group. From what he could see, Evan was sure that in 2 or 3 minutes Albelu's group would finish their job. After Albelu's group, Evan looked at Miss Spider's group that was facing Changes. Since Changes was recently promoted to Silver Rank Guild, there was only 1 A-rank hunter other than their leader. When Evan looked at Miss Spider's group through shadow senses, he saw a cocoon of webs that was covering the surroundings of Changes Guild. The A-rank hunter that was present in the guild was not part of the Dark Guild, so it was quite easy for Miss Spider and others to take care of that guild. When Evan looked at them, they were cleaning the scene and were preparing to head back. Nice. Evan was delighted after seeing both of the silver rank guilds were easily destroyed by his shadow undeads. The remaining 2 guilds, New Dawn and Finale Strike, were even weaker than these 2 guilds. Elijah and Rocky were cream of the crop among his shadow undeads, so their groups also took care of the 2 guilds without any problem. Evan had given his shadow undeads 1 hour to finish everything, but they finished the 4 guilds in less than 30 minutes. Evan was actually surprised seeing how easily his shadow undeads destroyed 4 guilds, but when he thought about the number of A+ rank shadow undead he had dispatched, it made sense that they were capable of destroying 4 guilds in less than 30 minutes. 5 minutes later, all of his shadow undeads came back. The 4 shadow undeads of the guild leaders that were killed by Adam and Eclipse were also with them. Evan was not interested in saving their shadow undeads, so he cancelled Shadow Resurrection, and all 4 of them disappeared. Evan summoned back all of his shadow undeads, and returned to the hotel where he was staying. After coming back to the hotel, he first used shadow senses to contact Kazal to see if they reached Naflium City. When he contacted him, Kazal told him that it would still take them 2 or 3 hours to reach Naflium City. After confirming his location, Evan took out his phone and messaged Sebastian, telling him that he already took care of 4 guilds. Sebastian was a bit speechless after seeing the message. Although he knew Evan would easily wipe out the 4 guilds, he did not expect him to do this in just 20 minutes. Evan thought if he should tell Sebastian about Isak's death, but after thinking about it for some time, he decided to tell him tomorrow, when he will go to pick up his armor and the other evolutionary materials for Carnage and Boots of the Voyager. Sebastian will soon spread the news that the 4 guilds were part of the Dark Guild, so I don't have to worry about anything. Evan said to himself and took out Isak's body from his shadow storage. When Evan saw Isak's body, he remembered what Isak said earlier, and a disdainful smile appeared on his face. Let's see if you will tell me or not, Evan said to himself and used Shadow Resurrection. Isak's body was in very good condition, so he easily turned him into a shadow undead. When Isaac's shadow undead came out, Evan did not waste his time, and immediately asked why he wanted to kill him. It was because of the Silver Star Guild, Isaac said after hearing Evan's question. Silver Star Guild. Evan raised an eyebrow and signaled him to continue. Isaac nodded his head and told him everything. When Isaac finished telling him everything, Evan was completely speechless and looked at him with a dumbfounded look. What the F***K man? It turned out Isaac wanted to kill him because he thought Valerie and he was dating. Because of his high talent, Isaac always believed that it wouldn't be difficult for him to marry Valerie and become the next guildmaster of the Silver Star Guild. His relationship with Valerie was quite good, and they were good friends. But for the past few months, he felt Valerie was getting closer to Evan. At first, he did not think too much about it. But when he found out how Sebastian allowed Evan to enter Wyvern Nest Dungeon without any reason, his wariness towards him increased. Soon he also received the news that Valerie especially asked the blacksmith to make high-rank gauntlets for Evan, and gifted them to him for free. Isaac felt that if things continued to go on like this, his dream of becoming the next guildmaster of the Silver Star Guild would be snatched away by Evan. Not wanting to lose his dream of becoming the next guildmaster of Silver Star Guild, Isaac decided to get rid of Evan. What kind of **King retarded was this guy? Evan muttered in a speechless voice, not knowing what he should say. He took a deep breath and cancelled Shadow Resurrection skill. The shadow undead of Isaac disappeared and Evan sat down on the bed. He rubbed his eyes for a moment before taking out the body of an A-rank spider. I thought he would have a good reason for doing all this, but to think, Evan said, and used energy absorption skill to absorb the body of the A-rank spider. Instead of wasting my time thinking about his bullshit, I should increase the rank of my prime core. For the next 2 hours, Evan continued to absorb the bodies of monsters one after another. 2 hours later, while Evan was absorbing the body of an A-rank spider, he received a message from Kazal, telling him that they entered the Naflium city. Chapter 514. Evan stopped absorbing the bodies of the monsters when he received Kazal's message. A small smile appeared on his face as he looked at the progress of his prime core. 25% in 2 hours. Huh? Evan said to himself after seeing the progress of his prime core. At this rate, it wouldn't be impossible for me to reach A+ rank before meeting Sebastian tomorrow. After confirming the rank of his core, Evan used his shadow senses and connected his vision with Kazal. When Evan connected his vision with Kazal, the plane was landing at the airport of Naflium City. Because Kazal was sitting on the roof of the plane, Evan could see thousands of monsters that were rampaging inside the city. The airport was still fine because many hunters were protecting the landing field. After the plane landed, Evan ordered Kazal to stay hidden and follow Sophie, Mark, Caleb and David. As the situation was quite dire, high-ranking hunters like Nathan and others immediately left the airport to provide support. Sophie and others were B and B+ rank hunters, so they were dispatched to the area where B rank dungeon outbreaks happened. Kazal followed Sophie and others from the distance, and through him, Evan was able to see the situation of the city perfectly. Kazal, fly up for a moment, Evan suddenly said to Kazal. Kazal stopped following Sophie and others and flew up in the sky. When Evan saw the condition of the city from the sky, he couldn't help but suck a breath of cold air. Around 1/4 part of the city was completely destroyed. Houses and buildings were burning, and monsters were ramping all over. All the safety formations of the city were already activated. Evan could see barriers that were covering the surroundings around the dungeons, but the number of monsters was so high that it was impossible to stop them even with the help of formations. Dead bodies of monsters, hunters and ordinary people were scattered everywhere. The ground of the city was dyed in red because of blood, and the entire city was in utter chaos. Evan couldn't help but curse Damien after seeing the condition of Naflium City. Kazal wiped out all monsters in this entire area. Kazal was following Sophie and others, so the area where he was currently was filled with monsters that ranged from C rank to B+ rank. Kazal was an S rank hunter, so it was a piece of cake for him to wipe out these low-level monsters. Don't expose yourself while killing them, Evan said when he saw Kazal taking out his dagger. Sophie, Mark, David and Caleb were working with other hunters to kill the monsters in that area. Kazal used his high agility and moved in the direction of the dungeon from where the monsters were coming from. In the direction of the dungeon, the number of monsters were highest. After creating a distance of around 3 kilometers from Sophie and other hunters, Kazal started to kill the monsters who were in that area. Kazal's dagger flashed in the middle of the groups of monsters, and with every single slash, he was claiming the life of a monster. A B+ rank lightning horse was charging in the direction where Sophie and others were killing the monsters, but suddenly a sharp black light flashed, and before the lightning horse could understand what happened, its head was separated from its body. Everything happened so fast that the body of the lightning horse continued to move forward for a few seconds even after losing its head. Kazal didn't even glance at the lightning horse, and quietly disappeared from the place. Just as he disappeared, a few more black lights flashed in front of the monsters, and their heads were also separate from their bodies. Since Kazal was killing the monsters with just a single attack, the number of monsters started to decrease rapidly in that area. In just 3 minutes, Kazal killed around 1/5 of the monsters in that area. Sophie, David, Caleb and Mark didn't find anything strange since they joined the fight just a few minutes ago. But the hunters who had been fighting for hours immediately noticed the change in the number of monsters. They were confused because of the sudden decrease in the number of monsters. But since it was a good thing, they didn't think too much about it, and started to kill the monsters with even more intensity. With the help of Kazal, the area of the B-rank dungeon was cleared in just 1 hour. The difference between an S-ranker and a B-ranker is quite big, so now that an S-rank hunter was helping them kill the monsters, it was natural that they were able to clear the area of one of the B-rank dungeons. When Sophie and others went deeper into the area and saw the headless bodies of thousands of monsters, all of them were stunned. Evan watched them through Kazal's vision as to how all of them were a little frightened after seeing thousands of headless corpses. Kazal, follow them and help them clear the monsters, Evan ordered Kazal when he saw Sophie and others were heading towards a different B-rank dungeon. He looked at the situation of Naflium City for a few more minutes before he stopped using his shadow senses. Judging by the condition of the city, it would take at least 3 or 4 days for them to completely wipe out the monsters and stabilize the city. Evan muttered to himself and took out the body of an A-rank spider. It is good that most of the normal people were successfully able to evacuate into the underground shelters, or the number of causalities would have definitely reached millions by now. Evan looked at the body of the spider that he took out, and used energy absorption skill on it. I need to increase the rank of my cores, if I want to completely wipe out the Dark Guild. The energy from the body of the A-rank spider rushed towards his prime core, and was absorbed by it. 6 hours later, Evan finished absorbing the body of an A+ rank monster. Just as he finished absorbing the body, the mana from the surroundings rushed towards him, and a mana vortex started to form above the hotel where he was staying. Chapter 515. Since it was morning, many people who were outside noticed the giant vortex that was forming above the hotel. In just a few seconds, the mana vortex's diameter increased to 8 kilometers. Most of the people were shocked to see such a large mana vortex, because even when someone's core evolves to S rank, the mana vortex's size will not exceed 5 kilometers. A large amount of mana came down from the mana vortex like a tidal wave, and Evan's body started to absorb it. Rumble. The foundation of the hotel shook because of the large amount of mana that was coming down from the vortex. Evan's body turned into a black hole, and all the mana that was coming from the vortex was absorbed by his prime core. While in the middle of advancing, Evan suddenly thought about something, and a deep frown appeared on his face. I completely forget about the issue of my shadow undeads and growth link skill. Evan muttered in a low voice and looked at his prime core, which was about to reach A+ rank. Now that Evan's core was about to reach the A+ rank, all of his shadow undeads that are currently at the peak of A rank will also reach to A+ rank because of the growth link skill. But the problem was that his shadow undeads could not evolve inside his shadow storage. So the moment his core reaches to A+ rank, all of his shadow undeads who will evolve because of growth link skill will come out from his shadow storage. There are many people outside, and if all of my shadow undeads come out and start to evolve at the same time, it will definitely cause an uproar, Evan said with a twitching mouth, and hoped his shadow undeads wouldn't come out for the time being. He used his control over shadow storage skill, and made it so that no one would be able to come out. I will make a run for the wilderness the moment my core successfully advances to A+ rank. Evan muttered to himself and focused on his prime core again. A few minutes later, the mana vortex above the hotel started to disappear, and Evan's prime core stopped absorbing more mana from the surroundings. Suddenly, his prime core shined for a moment and released a burst of energy that started to nourish his body. Although the feeling was very comfortable and Evan felt like sleeping, he knew it was time for him to make a run to the wilderness. After a few seconds, his core stopped releasing the energy, and his core stabilized at A+ rank. Your prime core advanced to A+ rank. Evan would have been very happy to see this notification if the notification that followed had not come. Your growth link skill activated. Without thinking about anything, Evan activated his shadow wings using shadow energy and rushed towards the exit of the city. While moving towards the exit of the city, he activated his other skills as well. Flicker steps, wind manipulation, temporal velocity, power aura, and mana reinforcement. Using so many skills at the same time made him so fast that Evan himself was shocked for a moment. If not for the temporal velocity skill that increases his perception, he might have already crashed somewhere, because of not being able to see anything while moving. Damn, I am feeling like my shadow undeads want to tear apart my shadow and come out. Evan was having a very hard time controlling his shadow undeads that wanted to come out. It was like the space of the shadow storage itself wanted to throw them out. Just 3 more minutes and I should be out of the city, Evan said while gritting his teeth as he flew towards the exit at lightning speed. With the usage of so many skills and his increased agility because of reaching A+ rank, he was covering a distance of a few kilometers with each passing second. His moving speed was incredible, but the consumption of mana and stamina was also something that he couldn't ignore. In just 2 minutes, Evan started to feel tired because of moving so fast. Beads of sweat appeared on his forehead, and he started to breathe heavily. When he finally exited the city, Evan was so tired that he fell to the ground, after making some distance from the exit of the city where guards were stationed. Just as he fell to the ground, all the shadow undeads who were at the peak of A rank came out from his shadow storage and started to evolve to A+ rank. The guards who were stationed at the city gate felt powerful energy waves coming from deep within the wilderness. Even the head of the guards, who was an A+ rank hunter, felt a chill running down his spine when he sensed the auras of hundreds of A+ monsters. What the hell is going on? The head of the guards muttered in a trembling voice while taking out his communication crystal. He was thinking about contacting Sebastian or Margaret after feeling the auras of so many A+ monsters. But just as he was thinking about contacting them, the auras of A+ rankers that he was feeling suddenly disappeared. The head of the guard was even more alarmed when he was not able to sense their aura. He knew A+ rank monsters have very high intelligence, so he thought all of them were planning to ambush the city. He hesitated for a moment before he called a few more guards and made his way towards the place from where he just felt the auras of so many A+ rank monsters. While he was making his way towards the place from where he felt the auras of so many monsters, Evan already left from there and returned back to the city, using his shadow walk skill. That was close, Evan muttered to himself after coming back inside the city. He opened his status window to see if he received any new skills after reaching to A+ rank. But just like always, he did not receive anything after evolving his prime core. He looked at the details of his growth link skill to see if there was any change in it. Last time when his prime core evolved to A rank, the second effect of his growth link skill also evolved. But when he looked at the details of the growth link skill, he couldn't help but sigh, because there was no change in it. I was not expecting to get any skills, but I was at least hoping to get a new spot for evolving my artifacts, Evan said in a dejected voice, after seeing there was no change in his growth link skill. He shook his head, thinking he would need to increase the rank of his monarch core if he wanted to get something good. He flew for 1 hour after coming back inside the city, and finally landed in front of the Silver Star Guild. Chapter 516. Evolution requirements for the Boots of Voyager. For full evolution: 1. S-rank prime core or S-rank monarch core. 2. 2 kilograms of void silver. 3. 2 S-rank cores, completed. 4. 5 ores of gala steel. Right parenthesis for pseudo-evolution. 1. A+ rank prime core, completed. 2. 500 grams of void silver. 3. 3 A+ rank cores, completed. 4. 3 ores of gala steel. Evan looked at the evolution requirements for the Boots of Voyager and nodded his head. I just need to get 500 grams of void silver and 3 ores of gala steel. to complete the pseudo-evolution, Evan said, and walked inside the Silver Star Guild. My luck was quite good. That Titan Elephant also dropped an S rank core, Evan muttered as he looked at the only completed requirement of the full evolution, along with the S rank core of the Abyssal Spider. Now he had 2 S rank cores. Evan stopped looking at the status window and stepped inside the elevator. Soon he arrived in the front of Sebastian's office. After arriving in front of his office, Evan rubbed his hands and opened the door without knocking, hoping to catch Sebastian doing some kind of suspicious activity. But he was disappointed when he opened the door because Sebastian was alone in the office. When Sebastian saw Evan coming in without knocking, he didn't even bother to curse him, and just sighed loudly. Looks like your night wasn't peaceful, Evan said after noticing some dark circles under Sebastian's eyes. Thanks to a certain hole who caused quite a mess yesterday. I had to work all night, Sebastian said, rubbing his temples. Well, since you worked all night, here is a bonus for you. Evan took out his phone and showed something to Sebastian. Sebastian looked at Evan's phone screen and raised an eyebrow. Suddenly a thought came to his mind, and all his tiredness disappeared. Is this? Sebastian looked at Evan and asked. Yup, these are the bases of the Dark Guild. Evan nodded his head when he saw Sebastian looking at him. Other than the guilds that are working for them, I also marked the locations of their bases that are located in the wilderness. Sebastian looked at the map on Evan's phone with a serious expression, and the more he looked at it, the uglier his expressions became. There are 7 guilds inside the Aquaville city that are working for them, Sebastian asked in a heavy voice after seeing a large number of Aquaville city guilds that were working for the Dark Guild. There were guilds in other cities as well that were working for them, but the number of guilds in the Aquaville city were the highest. I was also surprised when I saw there are actually 7 guilds working for them in Aquaville city. Evan said when he saw Sebastian's heavy expression, you are worried because of the Mad Hound Guild, right? Sebastian nodded his head looking at the only gold rank guild that was working for the Dark Guild. The difference between the silver rank and the gold rank guild was quite big, because, unlike the silver rank, gold rank guilds can get control over A rank dungeons. There are 2 A rank dungeons under the control of Mad Hound Guild, and if they used fetid mearsome to cause outbreaks in them, the consequences would be severe. The hunters of Aquaville city can easily handle the outbreak of 2 A rank dungeons, but the problem was that other than A rank dungeons, there were still some low-level dungeons under the command of the 6 other guilds, who are part of Dark Guild. If they cause outbreaks in all the dungeons under their command, it will be another disaster. Are you thinking about informing Morgana about this? Evan asked after seeing Sebastian's heavy expression. Morgana equals principal of Arcanum Academy. Sebastian didn't answer immediately and looked at the map for a few seconds. After a moment, he finally stopped looking at the map and opened his mouth. She is not the part of the Dark Guild, right? When Evan heard Sebastian, his mouth couldn't help but twitch. He felt as if Sebastian had lost faith in humanity. Don't worry, kind sir, she is clean. At least for now, Evan said and added the last sentence after remembering what happened with Damien. Sebastian once again sighed hearing Evan and leaned back on his chair. What are you planning to do now? I am planning to collect my S-rank armor, Void Silver, Gala Steel, Blood Crystals, Star Ore, and Dark Energy Crystal from you, Evan said, in a matter-of-fact voice. Sebastian's face turned sour when he heard Evan, but he didn't make a fuss about it, and threw a storage ring towards him. Other than Gala Steel and Star Ore, there are all the materials that you asked for, Sebastian said after throwing the ring. Evan caught the ring and furrowed his eyebrows when he heard there was no Star Ore or Gala Steel inside it. Looks like we'll have to ask Illusia to collect them for me, Evan thought to himself and looked inside the ring. After confirming the materials were right, Evan put away the storage ring and looked back at Sebastian. My armor is missing. Sebastian rolled his eyes and threw another storage ring towards him. Evan caught the ring and looked inside it. There was nothing but an armor inside the ring. When Evan looked at the details of the armor, his eyes opened wide in shock. He was so shocked that he did not know what to say. What do you think? He came out from his shock only after hearing Sebastian's voice. Evan took a deep breath and put away the storage ring. It is perfect, he said after putting away the ring. I will inform the authorities of other cities about the bases of the Dark Guild that are located inside their cities, Sebastian said after Evan put away the storage ring. Is there any place that you did not mark on the map? There are few places that I did not mark because I will take care of them myself. But all of these places are located in the wilderness, so don't worry about them. Sebastian just nodded and did not ask anything about the places that Evan did not mark. He was already getting a headache after seeing so many places that Evan marked on the map. Evan talked to Sebastian for a few more minutes and told him about Isaac's death. Sebastian already received news about Isaac's death last night, so he was not surprised when Evan told him everything. Evan felt something was off when Sebastian didn't show any kind of reaction after hearing Isaac's death, but he did not care too much about it and decided to leave. But before leaving, Evan suddenly thought about something and requested one thing from Sebastian. Sebastian was a little surprised when he heard Evan's request, but he agreed to it. After Sebastian agreed to his request, Evan left the Silver Star Guild. Now it is finally time to use my shadow undeads to their full potential, Evan thought inwardly and flew away from there. Chapter 517. After leaving the Silver Star Guild, Evan used his shadow senses and checked the situation in Naflium City. When he asked Kazal about the situation, Kazal told him that they cleared most of the monsters of the B-rank dungeons, but there was still many low-level dungeons. Evan talked to him for a few minutes, and after confirming there was no problem, he stopped using his shadow senses. Now I should also proceed with my plans, Evan said to himself and flew away from there. 2 hours later, 2 guards were standing in front of a B-rank dungeon portal talking to each other. The name of the dungeon was Skeleton Graveyard, a dungeon with high difficulty among the B-rank dungeons. Whoosh! Suddenly a white light flashed and a person came out from the dungeon portal. The 2 guards who were guarding the portal looked at the person who just come out from the dungeon, and an amused smile appeared on their faces. What happened, brother? You just went in 5 minutes ago and came out. Don't tell me you got so scared that you came out the moment you saw the first monster. One of the guards asked the person who came out with a grin on his face. You are right, man. The monsters inside are very scary. I can't handle them, so instead of wasting my time here, I decided to try my luck somewhere else, Evan said with a scared expression on his face, and left the dungeon under the mocking gaze of 2 guards. We told him to bring at least a party of 5 people if he wanted to clear this dungeon, but that overconfident stupid went inside alone. Now see, the guard who spoke earlier said while shaking his head. After Evan left the area of the dungeon, his expression returned to normal. He looked in the direction of the dungeon and a small smile appeared on his face. With this, my work here is completed, Evan said, and used shadow wings to fly away from there. Inside the Skeleton Graveyard dungeon, an army of 200 shadow undeads was moving forward, destroying anyone that came into their path. The army was being led by Elijah and Albelu. While Albelu and other monsters were terrorizing the skeletons of the Skeleton Graveyard dungeon, Elijah was looking around the area of the dungeon with her burning purple eyes. Elijah's eyes were spinning like swirling voids, looking exactly like Gobu's Eyes of the Abyss. Gobu can share his Eyes of the Abyss ability with other people, but at a time, he can only share the ability with one person. Before sending Elijah and his other shadow undeads inside the dungeon, Evan asked Gobu to stop sharing the ability with him, and share the Eyes of the Abyss ability with Elijah instead. Evan was not interested in clearing the dungeons. He wanted to look for ruins that might be located inside the dungeons. Earlier, Evan asked Sebastian if he could send his summoned monsters to clear the dungeons for himself. He said he would use the dungeon pass that he received as a reward during the practical exam, so Sebastian agreed to his request. While Elijah, Albelu and other shadow undeads were looking for the ruins inside the Skeleton Graveyard dungeon, Gobu was leading the other 200 shadow undeads inside another B-rank dungeon, looking for ruins. The chances of finding ruins inside the dungeon are very rare, so Evan split them into 2 groups, and each of them was searching inside a different dungeon. If not for the fact that Gobu could share his Eyes of the Abyss ability with only one person at a time, Evan would have split his shadow undeads into even smaller groups, and sent them into many different dungeons. It's a good thing I have the Rule Breaker title, otherwise I wouldn't have been able to use that dungeon pass anymore, Evan said to himself as he flew. Because of the rules of the dungeons, a hunter can't enter a dungeon that is lower rank than them. The dungeon pass that Evan received as a reward after the end of the practical exam allowed him to enter in any dungeon that is below A rank, but currently his rank is A+. He was able to enter the B rank dungeon only because of the second effect of his title Ruler Breaker. which allows him to ignore the rules of the dungeon. It's a pity Sebastian told me not to bring bodies of the monsters outside from the dungeon, Evan said while shaking his head. When Sebastian agreed to his request, he told him not to bring the bodies of the monsters outside of the dungeon. If he brought bodies outside just like what he did with the Wyvern Nest dungeon, it would take the dungeons a long time to recover, and Sebastian can't afford that. Well, I can at least collect the cores of the monsters that my shadow undeads will kill inside the dungeons, Evan said, and flapped his wings, heading towards his next destination. While flying, he contacted Alusia using shadow sensors, and told her to collect Galasteel and Star Ore for the evolution of his artifacts. Evan was certain that she would be able to collect Galasteel without any problem, but he was not certain about the Star Ore because it was quite rare. Let's hope she will find it somehow, Evan said, and soon landed in front of the airport of the Astrate City. Before going inside the airport, Evan took out his phone and sent a message to Sebastian. Now, there should be no problem even if I leave Astrate City for a while, Evan said and went inside the airport. Although I'm not sure about Inferno Dungeon, I think it's time to go to Ravenhurst City and take care of Amara, now that I've reached A+ rank. Evan waited for some time after going inside the airport, and soon boarded the plane that was going to Ravenhurst City. Chapter 518. It will take me about 35 hours to reach the city of Ravenhurst, Evan said to himself after boarding the plane. There were very few people who were going to Ravenhurst City. After what happened in Naflian City, most of the hunters were staying in their respective cities, so that they could protect them if the Dark Guild tries to cause any trouble. Evan was not worried about Astrate City because of his shadow undeads. There were around 400 A+ rank shadow undeads that he was leaving behind. Even if the Dark Guild tries to cause any problem, they will not be able to do anything against his shadow undeads. 400 A+ rank monsters were no joke. Even in the army of the Stone Buffalo and Titan Elephant, there were just 36 A+ rank and 142 A rank monsters. The rest of the monsters were lower than A rank. He also informed Sebastian that his shadow undeads are inside the dungeon and will come out to help them if anything goes wrong. Evan was bringing around 100 shadow undeads with him, including the 2S rank shadow undeads of the Stone Buffalo and Titan Elephant. Although after reaching the A+ rank his power increased greatly, he was not going to underestimate his enemy, especially after hearing about Amara from Kazal. The person who is behind this mess, huh? Evan muttered in a low voice. According to Kazal, Sarah wanted to capture him and Valerie because of Amara. I was quite disappointed knowing Gobu lost his talent of alchemy after evolving into Eldritch Goblin, but according to Kazal, this Amara is even more impressive than Goblin Kings in the field of alchemy. Evan had seen the strange potions and the things used by the people of the Dark Guild, and after seeing all of these things, he had to admit that Amara was indeed more impressive than Goblin Kings in the field of alchemy. Even the potion that Sarah gave to Olivia was created by Amara. Not only that, the fusion of the monsters and the hunters was also her doing. Carlos was also one of her products. She fused him with a wind wolf, granting him the power of both the hunter and the wind wolf. The mindless people that he faced in the central city were also created by her. Just like Carlos, she fused them with monsters, increasing their power greatly. But after fusing them with monsters, she destroyed their ego, turning them into mindless puppets that only listened to her commands. These mindless puppets were her newly developed products, and she gave them to Sarah, so that she could test their power. Unfortunately for them, those puppets were completely useless against Evan when Sarah sent them to test him. Alchemy is one thing, but to think she is also a good formation master. The reason Evan was wary of Amara was because she was not only an alchemist, but also a good formation master. According to Kazal, all the escape scrolls that people of the Dark Guild carry around like normal tools were created by her. The escape scrolls created by her is one of the best that can easily teleport people thousands of kilometers away. Evan already knew how a powerful formation could affect him. What happened inside the Myriad Formation dungeon was still fresh in his mind. Because of the Absolute Ceiling Formation, he almost lost his life there. I will need to be careful while dealing with her. Evan looked out the window of the plane and said to himself, Sarah is very close to Amara, so there is a very high chance I will be able to catch both of them together. This was also one of the reasons why Evan brought the shadow undeads of the Stone Buffalo and the Titan Elephant with him. He knew that Amara would be difficult to deal with. But if he had to face Sarah at the same time, he could not afford to be careless. Now that I think about it, there is that trap guy as well. Evan suddenly thought of Noah, and wondered if he would meet that guy too. Noah also has a unique physique, and he is also part of the Dark Guild. Since he has a unique physique, there is a great possibility that Evan might be able to meet him while looking for Amara. If I successfully turn that Amara into a shadow undead, I will get a great alchemist and formation master at the same time. Evan said and closed his eyes. Time continued to move, and soon the plane was about to land at the airport of Ravenhurst City. In the past 35 hours, Evan did nothing and just looked at the situation of Naflium City, and his shadow undeads who were inside the dungeons, searching for the ruins. The situation of Naflium City started to stabilize, but there were still many monsters scattered all over the city. The hunters were still trying to clean them, because Kazal was helping in clearing the monsters of low-level dungeons. Their clean speed was way faster than they expected. As for his shadow undeads inside the dungeons, they were still searching for the ruins. The area of B-rank dungeons was very vast, so it was not easy for them to look for ruins. But it was not a problem. Because of their overwhelming strength, no monster could stop them inside the B-rank dungeons, so their searching speed was not slow. Evan was sure that it wouldn't take them to find their target. I hope they find the ruins and get a good reward similar to Mana Affinity Fruit, Evan said and stood up from his seat. He followed the people who were in front of him and exited the plane. It was the first time Evan came to Ravenhurst City, but after leaving the airport, he did not think about traveling around the city and decided to proceed with his plans. Chapter 519. Damn, there are just 2 days left, and I am still far from the target. Quote, a man with light brown skin and black hair said while rubbing his temples. The man was looking at a list in his hands, showing the names and ranks of some hunters. That crazy woman won't let me off if I don't reach the target. The name of the man was Cedric, and he was the guild master of the Cobra Guild. Cobra was one of the gold rank guilds of Ravenhurst City. The Cobra Guild has a clean background in the light, but in the dark, they are nothing but puppets of the Dark Guild. I still need to capture 5 more hunters to reach the target, Cedric said and arched his eyebrows. Even if I decide to sacrifice the 3 new hunters who joined our guild recently, I am still short on 2 hunters. Just as Cedric was wondering what he should do, he heard an indifferent voice. Guess, I am at the right place. Cedric was shocked when he heard the voice. He quickly stood up and looked around to find the person who had just spoken, but he found no one in his office room. Now I even started to hear things because of this SHI*TI task, Cedric said in a low voice and was about to sit down when his body stiffened. He tried to move his body, but to his horror, he found he couldn't even move his fingers. I don't think you are hearing things. Cedric heard the voice once again, and a person suddenly appeared in front of him. When Cedric saw Evan suddenly appearing in front of him, he became frightened. He was very close to reaching the peak of A+ rank, and since he had not been able to sense Evan's presence before, he could only think of one reason. This guy is an S-rank hunter, Cedric cried in his mind and tried to move his body so he could run away, but because of shadow nails, it was completely useless. Evan sat down on a chair in front of Cedric and looked at him without any expression on his face. Cedric wanted to gulp down his saliva when he saw Evan was looking at him, but even that was impossible because of shadow nails. So you are the guy who captures hunters and normal people for that woman's experiments, huh? Evan said after a moment. Cedric was even more frightened when he heard this. Now he was sure that Evan knew everything about him and his connection with the Dark Guild. Normally I would have killed you without blinking an eye, but you're lucky that I have other uses for you, Evan said, and used mind suppression skill on him. He did not use full power while activating mind suppression skill, because he was afraid Cedric's head would explode like a watermelon, because of his unnatural spiritual power. Although Evan didn't use his full power while activating the skill, Cedric's eyes still turned red in just a few seconds, and blood started to come out from them. Soon his ears, mouth and nose also started to bleed. If not for the fact that Cedric couldn't move because of shadow nails, he would have started howling in pain long ago. If Gobu was here, I could have turned this guy into my slave just like what I did with the nameless host. But since he is not here, and Hana will have to control his mind for the time being, I need to weaken his mind as much possible, Evan said to himself and increased the power of mind suppression even more. Tears of blood started to come out from Cedric's eyes, But Evan didn't stop using his skill, because he knew it was not easy to break the mind of an A+ rank hunter. Although I am sure Hana can easily control one A+ rank hunter, since she is also an A+ rank monster now, I still can't take any risk, Evan said, looking at Cedric, who was looking like he would die at any moment. Besides, a cold look appeared on Evan's face, and he increased the power of mind suppression even more. It is not like a person who sold off thousands of people to that Amara deserves to be treated kindly. Because of the effect of mind suppression, Cedric was about to pass just after 1 minute. When Evan saw Cedric was about to pass out, he finally stopped using mind suppression on him. Now Hana should be able to take control of his mind without any problem, Evan said to himself, looking at Cedric, whose entire face was stained in blood that came out from his eyes. Drops of blood were still dripping down from his nose and mouth, and he was looking like someone whose soul escaped from his body. Without caring about Cedric's condition, Evan summoned Hana from his shadow storage. Hana, control his mind, Evan said to the little cat when she came out from his shadow storage. Even though Hana was now at A+ rank, its size was still the same, and Evan still couldn't see her skills, using the second effect of growth link skill. When Hana heard Evan's command, her purple eyes glowed and psychic waves came out from her body. Because of his high spiritual power, Evan was easily able to sense the psychic waves that were coming out from Hana's body, and he was amazed, because the power of those psychic waves was enough to control even an S-rank hunter. When the psychic waves touched Cedric's body, his eyes lost all of their luster and became hollow for a moment. Meow. After 10 seconds, Hana meowed and told Evan that Cedric was now under her control. Perfect, Evan said, and cancelled the Shadow Nails skill. There are still 2 days before you deliver the captured people to Amara, right? Yes, Master. Even though his condition was not good, Cedric still answered in a hoarse voice. Evan arched his eyebrows when he heard Cedric. I don't want to waste 2 days here without doing anything. Is there any way to meet her tonight? There is, but I am not sure if it will work or not, Cedric said, and explained the situation to Evan. After Cedric finished explaining, Evan rubbed his chin and pondered for a moment. Looks like there is no other way, he muttered and nodded his head. All right, go ahead and call them. Let's see if it will work or not. Chapter 520. The sky was filled with bright stars, and the light of the moon was illuminating the wilderness. The monsters who hunt during the night were already out, searching for their target. Sounds of monster roars and fights were echoing throughout the wilderness, sending a chill running down to the spines of the hunters who came into the wilderness to earn a fortune during the night. Amid the roars and fights of the monsters, a van was moving forward in the wilderness. Cedric was sitting in the driving seat and was continuously releasing his aura of A+ rank hunter while driving. Because of his powerful aura, no monster dared to come near the van. Hana was sitting beside him, fully controlling his mind. Evan was sitting at the back of the van, along with 10 people who were unconscious. Normally Cedric has to deliver 15 people to Amara every month. But if by any chance he successfully captures a hunter who is B rank or above, Amara instructed him to deliver that hunter to her immediately. Since there was still 2 days before Cedric sent the people he captured to Amara, and Evan had no time to waste, he used his shadow shrouding wings, and concealed his aura to that of a B rank hunter. Cedric contacted the people who worked under Amara, and told them that he captured a B rank hunter, and just as he expected, those people told Cedric to bring the B rank hunter along with the people he captured this month. Evan also used the second effect of the growth link skill and took Illusion's skill Chameleon Illusion to change his appearance. Currently, his appearance was completely different. His face was looking like a middle-aged man with black eyes and spiky sky blue hair. Yes, he was looking like a middle-aged punk. He was sure no one would be able to identify him with his current look. Cedric never met Amara in person. He always hands over the people he captured to the hunters who are working under her, so he is not sure about their exact strength. Evan muttered while deep in thought. I should try to figure out their strength before doing anything. Evan was sure that in a head-on fight, he could easily crush even 5S rank hunters alone, but he was being cautious because of the formations that Amara might have created around her base in order to keep it safe. Although he doesn't want to admit it, Evan was a little fearful of the formations, after what happened inside the Mirrored Formation dungeon. Currently, he has the advantage because Amara and others are not aware that he is going to attack them. and he is planning to use this advantage to its fullest. It's a pity I was not able to use the 2 locked skills of Gobu even with my current world essence. The name of those 2 skills was really BADA*S. Evan said while shaking his head. Reality shifting. Locked. Can't be used without the world essence. Limited temporal manipulation. Locked. Can't be used without the world essence. Evan tried to use these 2 skills of Gobu while he was in the central city, but just like Gobu, he also wasn't able to use the skills, because the amount of world essence he had was very low. He tried to use shadow energy to activate those 2 skills, but even with shadow energy, he was not able to activate these 2 skills. Well, looks like I will need to spend some time inside the dungeon and increase the amount of world essence I have, Evan said out loud and closed his eyes while leaning back. 6 hours later. Master, we are about to reach. Evan opened his eyes when he heard Cedric's voice coming from the front of the van. He took a deep breath and looked at the 10 unconscious people who were sitting around him. Let's hope everything will work out, Evan muttered in a low voice and closed his eyes, pretending to be unconscious just like other people. A few minutes later, Cedric stopped the van in an area that was looking like a swamp. Although Evan's eyes were closed, he was using his spiritual senses to monitor his surroundings. With the help of his spiritual senses, Evan noticed 5 men who were hiding behind thick mangroves that were growing in the swamp. 3 B+ rank and 2 A rank hunters. Evan thought inwardly after seeing the rank of the 5 people. When they saw Cedric coming out of the van, they all stopped hiding and came out from behind the mangroves as well. Hurry up and take them out so that I can go back, Cedric said in an irritated voice when he saw them. Evan instructed Cedric to behave like he always does with them, so all 5 of them didn't find it strange, and just walked to the back of the van without saying anything. They were curious about Hana, who was sitting at Cedric's right shoulder, but they didn't ask him anything. Although they all were working directly under Amara, Cedric was still an A+ rank hunter, and they knew he wouldn't hesitate to beat their *T out of them if they piss him off. After opening the back of the van, all 5 of them looked at the 10 people, and their eyes stopped on Evan for a moment. One of the A-rank hunters, who had green eyes and brown hair, used his skill and wind wrapped around all the people who were unconscious inside the van, including Evan. He waved his hand, and all of them started to float a little above the floor of the van. Within seconds, the brown-haired hunter brought all the unconscious people out of the van. Cedric did not even bother to say goodbye to them after they took out Evan and others, and directly left from there with Hana. What an arrogant bastard, one of the B+ rank hunters said after Cedric left. He is also just a dog like us, but he behaves like he is at the top of the world, the second A rank hunter said with a sneer on his face. Evan was still looking at them with his spiritual senses, while pretending to be unconscious. All 5 of the hunters cursed Cedric for a few minutes before the brown-haired hunter told them to move. They brought Evan and others deeper into the forest of the mangroves. The ground was filled with muddy water, and Evan felt the auras of a few monsters who were roaming in the mangroves. Where are they taking us? Evan thought, feeling confused because he could not see anything within the range of his spiritual senses. That was now 30 kilometers after he reached A+ rank. Just as Evan was wondering where the hunters were taking them, they stopped near a stone that was placed inside the muddy water amid the mangroves. Under the confused eyes of Evan, the brown-haired hunter stepped forward and placed his hand on the rock. Just as he placed his hand on the rock, a formation that was hidden within the muddy water lit up, and all of them disappeared from the place they were standing. Chapter 521. What the _ Evan was stunned when the brown-haired man, whose name was Kevin, suddenly activated the teleportation formation. He was constantly using his spiritual senses to scout the surroundings, but he was not able to sense the presence of that formation before Kevin activated it. Just what kind of method did they use to hide this formation? Evan thought inwardly before he disappeared from the place along with other people. With his current spiritual power, Evan was confident enough to detect even high-level formations, which is why he was surprised that he was not able to detect the teleportation formation that was hidden within the muddy water. When Evan reached the other end of the teleportation formation, he was even more shocked because he was sure that the teleportation formation had sent them at least 10,000 kilometers away from the swamp, where they were a moment ago. This teleportation formation is at least 2 times more powerful than the teleportation formations used by the Association, Evan said to himself. after feeling the space fluctuations that were coming from the teleportation formation. With the help of his spiritual senses, Evan noticed they were teleported to a place that was looking like a warehouse. Glenn, go ahead and report that we've brought the goods, Kevin said to the second A-rank hunter of the group, after they were successfully teleported. Hearing Kevin, Glenn nodded his head and left the warehouse. Evan did not spread his spiritual senses out of the warehouse, because he was afraid of being caught. Although his spiritual power was even stronger than S-rank hunters, he didn't want to take any risk before meeting Amara. Jaden, wake them up. After Glenn left, Kevin said to one of the B+ rank hunters. Hearing Kevin, Jaden stretched his hand in the direction of Evan and the other 10 unconscious people. When Evan saw this, he couldn't help but sigh inwardly. I guess it's time to take a bath, Evan said to himself, and in the next moment a large amount of water came out of Jaden's open palm and splashed on him and the other 10 unconscious people. All the unconscious people were jolted awake and looked around in confusion. Among the 10 people, 3 were hunters, and 7 were normal people. All 3 hunters were D+ rank and were under the age of 30. I will beat the hell out of this water guy. Later Evan vowed to himself, and also acted like a confused lamb, just like the other 10 people. Where am I? Who are you people? Rowan, one of the D+ rank hunters, asked Kevin after looking at his surroundings. You don't need to know where you are. What you need to know is that if you don't want to die, then just be quiet and don't bother me, Kevin said in a threatening tone, and released his aura of A-rank hunter. The faces of Rowan and other people turned pale when they felt Kevin's aura. Most of them were just normal people, so it was impossible for them to handle Kevin's pressure. If not for the fact that he was controlling his aura, the heart of most of the normal people would have already exploded. Evan also tried to pretend to be scared, but if anyone looked closely at his face, they would have easily seen that he was just bluffing. When Kevin saw the pale faces of Rowan and the others, he snorted and stopped releasing his aura. He also knew that if he accidentally killed someone, it would bring him trouble. Rowan and others sighed in relief when Kevin stopped releasing his aura, and looked at him with horror-filled eyes. Captain, look at the guy who is B-rank hunter. It seems like he is not afraid of you. Suddenly Jaden said to Kevin in an amused voice when he noticed Evan's scared expressions that were looking completely fake. Kevin looked at Evan, whose spiky sky blue hair were wet, and his mouth couldn't help but twitch. Hey punk, if you are not afraid then why are you pretending? Evan sighed inwardly when he heard Kevin and felt a little regretful that he didn't practice before coming here. His expression returned to normal, and he nodded his head. All right, I won't try to act scared. Kevin and others were left speechless when they heard Evan. Evan thought that maybe he had just blown his cover, and Kevin and others would now try to investigate why he was not afraid. But all his worries were for naught. I think this guy is mentally ill, another B-rank hunter who was standing with Jaden suddenly said after hearing Evan. Jaden also nodded his head and felt the same. Kevin looked at Evan for a moment before shaking his head. It doesn't matter if he is mentally ill or not. We just have to send him off once Glenn returns, and our job will be done. I just hope after she finds out that this guy is mentally ill, and doesn't even understand what kind of situation he's in, she won't take her anger out on us, Jaden said, and stopped looking at Evan, who remained expressionless throughout their conversation. He was trying his best to control his expressions when they called him mentally ill. I will show you guys later who is mentally ill. About 10 minutes later, Glenn returned back to the warehouse. She told us to bring them to her, Glenn said to Kevin after coming back. Kevin nodded his head and looked at Rowan and the others. He released some of his aura and said to them in a threatening tone, stand up and follow me. Rowan and the others were already scared of Kevin, so they stood up obediently. Evan also stood up with them. You guys stay here. I will be back after delivering them, Kevin said to Glenn and others and left from there with Evan and others. Chapter 522. Why? Evan followed after Kevin and others, and left the place where the teleportation formation was located. After coming out, Evan was completely stunned when he looked at his surroundings. Don't tell me he suddenly thought about something and used his spiritual senses to confirm his suspicion. Evan tried his best not to alert anyone while using his spiritual senses, and after around 10 seconds, he stopped using them. This entire place is actually built underground. Evan took a deep breath and said, looking at the cave-like structures that were built around him. The warehouse that he came out from was also built digging the cave. There were dozens of identical warehouse-like structures and different paths leading to different locations. It was like a labyrinth that was dug underground. This place is completely isolated from the outside and is full of different kinds of traps, so don't even think about running away. If you get lost inside this labyrinth, you will die a miserable death, Kevin said when he saw some people were looking at different paths that were dug inside the cave, seemingly thinking about running away. When Rowan and others heard Kevin, their expressions fell because they were indeed thinking about running away. Evan didn't care about what Kevin was saying because he was thinking about something else. With his spiritual senses, he just scanned the area of 2 kilometers around him. But even after scanning the area of 2 kilometers, he didn't see anyone within the labyrinth. What is going on here? Evan thought to himself, feeling confused. He thought that like the other Dark Guild bases he had seen so far, this place would also be filled with hunters working for them. But apart from Kevin and the other 4 hunters, he did not see anyone else here. Suddenly Evan thought about something and used his spiritual senses once again. But instead of looking around him, he sent his spiritual senses inside the ground. For the first kilometers in the underground, he didn't find anything strange. But after 1 kilometer, he suddenly noticed another labyrinth that was built under the labyrinth he was in. He wanted to look around this labyrinth using his spiritual senses. But just as he thought about investigating further, his instincts told him to stop. He wasn't sure what the reason was, but he felt that if he tried to expand his spiritual senses further, he would be discovered. At least I can feel the aura of dozens of people from there, so this means this place is not different from their other bases, Evan thought, and stopped using his spiritual senses. He continued to follow Kevin, and while following him, he also scanned the different warehouses that were located in the labyrinth. Most of the warehouses were filled with construction materials and tools, but in some of the warehouses, Evan noticed rotting dead bodies of monsters and a few humans. There was even a warehouse that was looking like a laboratory, filled with different types of equipment that Evan had never seen before. Suddenly, Evan noticed something in one of the warehouses, and his footsteps halted for a moment. But he did not stop for long and continued to follow Kevin and others. It seems that these people are similar to the people who attacked me in Central City, Evan thought, looking at 20 people who were standing in one of the warehouses like puppets. Evan wanted to destroy the entire underground labyrinth, especially after seeing a warehouse that was filled with the blood of humans and their rotting bodies. But he knew it was not the time. Since this place is located underground, I think I can destroy all the formations that Amara created to protract this place. If I use that attack, Evan thought inwardly, and a cold light flashed inside his eyes. After 10 minutes of walking, Kevin brought them in front of a small room that was also dug within the cave. Even before entering the room, Evan could already feel what was inside. Another teleportation formation. Kevin opened the black iron door of the room, and just as Evan expected, he saw a teleportation formation inside it. This must be the formation that will teleport us to the labyrinth located below us, Evan thought, and stepped inside the room with Kevin and others. Kevin activated the formation, and all of them disappeared from the room. When Evan arrived at the other end of the teleportation formation, he instantly felt tens of eyes looking in his direction. Evan did not do anything when he felt the presence of many people, and looked around him calmly. Now this is what you call a hidden base. In front of Evan was a place that was looking like an underground city. Hunters who ranged from D rank to B+ rank were moving around all over. What surprised Evan even more was the fact that other than hunters, he noticed some monsters who ranged from C+ rank to A rank were also moving around the city. Most of the people and monsters who were present near the teleportation formation were looking in their direction. Rowan and others felt their legs trembling when so many people looked at them at the same time. Stop spacing out and follow me. They came back to their senses only after hearing Kevin, and quickly followed after him. These people are a bit strange, Evan said inwardly. When he looked at the people who were walking around, suddenly he felt the aura of one of the C+ rank hunter, and he finally understood what was wrong with all the people who were walking around. These all people are similar to Carlos, Evan said inwardly, after confirming the aura of monsters that was coming out from their bodies. If there are high-level hunters who are also fused with monsters, it will not be easy to take them down. Evan wanted to use his spiritual senses to confirm the number of high-ranking hunters in that area, but his instincts were still telling him not to use his spiritual senses. Looks like this task will be more troublesome than I initially thought. Evan sighed and continued to follow after Kevin. 5 minutes later, Kevin stopped in front of a building and looked at Rowan and others. I hope you all will be able to survive and join us, he said, and opened the door of the building. Chapter 523. 2A+ rankers. Evan said to himself when he felt the gaze of 2A+ rank hunters. After stopping in front of the building, both of the A+ rank hunters were hidden very well, and no one other than Evan was able to sense them. From their wild aura, I think they are also hunters who fused themselves with monsters. Evan narrowed his eyes, because he was sure that the power of an A+ rank hunter who fused himself with a monster would not be normal. I hope you all will be able to survive and join us. Kevin was also unaware of the presence of 2A+ rank hunters, so he said to Rowan and others, and opened the door of the building. Rowan and the others looked at each other with hesitating eyes and followed Kevin inside the building. Before entering, Evan looked at the building for a moment. He felt like he was going to enter in Wolf's Den, but instead of feeling anxious about the situation for some reason, he felt quite excited. It is good that I came here using Cedric instead of attacking directly. Now I at least know that besides Amara, there are some high-level monsters and high-level hunters that I need to be careful of. Evan thought and followed after Rowan and the others. After entering the building, Kevin took an elevator and brought Evan and others even deeper into the underground. How did they manage to create such a thing underground? Evan couldn't help but think after seeing Kevin using an elevator to bring them even deeper into the underground. Another thing that shocked Evan was that his spiritual senses were not able to pass through the walls of the elevator. There was a high-level formation that was blocking his spiritual senses from seeing what was on the other side of the elevator. Evan felt that if he tried to use the full power of his spiritual senses, he would be able to see what was on the other side of the elevator, but he did not do so, because he was afraid of being caught. After going 500 meters underground, the elevator suddenly stopped and its door started to open. Now we are around 2.5 kilometers underground, Evan thought, and looked at the 7 normal people who were with them. Rowan and other D+ rank hunters were fine, but those 7 already started to feel uncomfortable because of underground pressure. Soon the door of the elevator opened, and they were all finally able to see what was on the other side of the elevator. When Rowan and the others saw the scene behind the elevator doors, they were left with their mouths open wide because of shock. Meanwhile, Evan's expression turned deadly serious. What the fuck is going on here? Evan said to himself, feeling shocked. In front of Rowan and others was a place that was looking like a laboratory with different kinds of equipments and other high-tech devices. But what shocked them was the fact that inside the laboratory, they could see many human-sized test tubes that were filled with different types of monsters and humans. The even more shocking thing was that there were many humanoid monsters who were working inside the laboratory. There were some humanoid monsters who were looking like a fusion of humans and orcs, some were looking like a fusion of wolves and humans, and many more. At first glance, there were at least 20 different kinds of humanoid monsters inside the laboratory. All of them were wearing white lab coats, and were looking like lab assistants. Just like Rowan and the other hunters, Evan was also shocked because of the strange scene in front of him. But there was something else that shocked him even more. All of these humanoid monsters ranged from B rank to A rank. Evan thought, inwardly feeling baffled because of so many high-level humanoid monsters. But there was still one more thing that made no sense to him. I can feel the aura of 2S rank hunters here, Evan thought with a serious expression, and took a step forward, entering the laboratory with Kevin and others. According to Kazal, there should only be one S rank hunter, so who is this second S ranker? What are all these monsters? Rowan asked Kevin in a trembling voice after seeing the humanoid monsters and test tubes that were inside the laboratory. Damn, no matter how many times I see it. But that woman is really a crazy bitch, Kevin thought inwardly, while gulping down his saliva, when he saw the lifeless eyes of the humanoid monsters that were inside the laboratory. When he heard Rowan's question, he took a deep breath and said in a serious voice, "Don't ask any questions if you don't want to be eaten by these guys." Rowan and the other people turned pale when they heard Kevin and immediately closed their mouths. Kevin led them deeper into the laboratory, and other than humanoid monsters, they did not see anyone. After 1 minute, Rowan and others finally saw a woman who was standing in front of a test tube that was filled with green fluid. But instead of feeling relief after seeing a human among the monsters, all of them including Kevin, felt a chill running down their spine when they saw what the woman was doing. The woman was looking at the test tube, which was filled with green fluid. Inside the green fluid, an orc was writhing in pain, and its body was swelling, as if it would burst at any moment. Since the woman's back was facing them, they were not able to see her face, but it was not hard for Evan to guess the identity of the woman. Now I understand why I felt the auras of two S-rank hunters earlier, Evan thought and narrowed his eyes. Kazal told me that Amara was an A+ rank hunter, but looks like she reached S rank. Oh, you guys are here. Suddenly Amara turned around and looked at Evan and others when she felt their presence. When she turned around, all of them were finally able to see her face. She was looking in her mid-30s, and had a beautiful, gentle-looking face, long black hair, amber-colored eyes and thin eyelashes. She was wearing a long white lab coat, and had a smile on her face. Bang! Just as she turned around, the body of the orc exploded, turning the green liquid that was inside the test tube red. The faces of Rowan and others turned pale when they saw this, but Amara did not seem to care about them. Thanks for your work, Kevin, she said to Kevin, and her eyes stopped on Evan, who was standing along with Rowan and others. I really needed a B-rank hunter, because I had to do some testing. It's good that Cedric caught him for me, Amara said, and started to walk away from there without even looking at Rowan and others. Follow me, B-rank guy. If this test is successful, you may be able to achieve power you can only dream about. Amara had just walked a few meters when she suddenly stopped because she noticed that Evan was not following her. Chapter 524. Why? Evan was baffled when Amara called him out. He didn't expect her to call him as soon as he arrived, and because of the surprise, he did not move even after Amara started to walk away. Orc punk, do you want to die? Why are you standing still when Ma'am is calling you? Evan came back to his senses after hearing Kevin's angry voice. Sorry, I was just shocked after seeing those humanoid monsters, and wasn't able to react on time when she called me. Evan quickly came forward and said to Kevin in an apologetic tone. Kevin cursed inside his mind when he saw Evan was apologizing to him instead of Amara. Please forgive this guy. He is actually mentally ill, so he can't think properly with his damaged brain. Kevin quickly said to Amara, thinking that she would kill Evan and do her testing on him. Mentally ill? Amara raised an eyebrow when she heard Kevin and looked at Evan carefully. He looks completely fine to me. He actually can't understand his situation properly. He was even pretending underscore. Enough. Amara stopped Kevin before he could finish speaking. I don't have time to hear your stupid stories. After saying this, she completely ignored Kevin and said to Evan in a slightly cold voice, come with me. This time Evan immediately followed after her without delay. UBI*CH. At least tell me, what should I do with these people? Kevin cursed inwardly when he saw Amara was leaving, without telling him what he should do with Rowan and others. While following Amara, Evan noticed that the walls of the entire laboratory were identical to the walls of the elevator he had seen earlier. The entire laboratory was covered in formations, and his spiritual senses couldn't penetrate the walls of the laboratory, just like the walls of the elevator. Soon Amara brought him in front of a lab room. The door of the lab room opened and she went inside while signaling Evan to follow her. This room, when Evan saw the outer walls of the lab room, a thought suddenly came into his mind. He quickly followed Amara inside the room, and after seeing the walls inside the room were also the same, his lips curled upward in a small smile. I can feel that the second S-rank hunter whose aura I sensed earlier is still out there, keeping an eye on Kevin and the others. Since that's the case, then this might be my chance, Evan thought, and a cold light flashed inside his eyes. As he followed Amara, the door to the lab room closed and Evan's smile became even more pronounced. Surprisingly, the lab room was actually quite big. Only after entering did Evan realize that he couldn't call it a room, because the lab was at least half the size of a football stadium. Don't tell me she can even draw space expansion formation, Evan thought inwardly, feeling shocked once again. From the outside, the lab was looking very small, so the only reason that he could think of for its large size was the space expansion formation. I need to turn her into my shadow undead, Evan said to himself, and took a deep breath, after knowing she could even draw space expansion formations. Other than some lab equipments and test tubes that were filled with strange monsters, There was nothing much inside the lab. Amara stopped in front of an empty test tube that was filled with purple liquid. Drink it. After stopping, she took out a bottle of red potion and handed it to Evan. Evan raised an eyebrow after getting the potion bottle and tried to look at its details. But all he saw were question marks. There was no detail about the potion. What is this? Seeing as he could not confirm the details of the potion, Evan didn't dare to drink it rashly and asked Amara, "You don't need to know. Just drink it and get inside the test tube," Amara said in a cold tone and walked towards a large screen that was connected to the test tube. "She is treating me like a lab rat," Evan said inwardly, and a sneer appeared on his face. "If it had happened outside this lab room, I would have had to think twice before acting. But since she herself has given me this golden opportunity, there is no reason for me not to use it," Evan said in a low voice, and opened the cork of potion bottle. When Amara heard the sound of the bottle opening, she turned around and looked at him with a smile on her gentle face. Evan also showed her a gentle smile that looked rather crooked because of his punk-like face, and suddenly turned the potion bottle upside down. The sound of liquid splashing on the floor echoed throughout the lab, and the smile on Amara's face slowly disappeared. "What are you doing?" "Actually, I don't like its smell. Do you have strawberry or chocolate flavor in it?" Evan asked after splashing all the potion on the ground. "It's a potion, not a condom that comes in different flavors. So stop wasting my time and drink it before I forcefully shove it inside you," Amara said in a cold voice, and threw another bottle of potion towards Evan. The only reason she didn't lash out was because of Kevin, who told her that Evan is mentally ill. "Woman, be careful with your words, otherwise people will start doubting what kind of experiment you are doing here," Evan said nonchalantly, and turned the potion bottle that Amara threw at him upside down again, splashing all the potion to the ground. Amara's face turned dark when she saw this, and killing intent started to come out from her body. Evan completely ignored the killing intent that Amara was releasing and smiled at her. "My job became much easier, thanks to the formations that you built around the laboratory to hide it from others," Evan said and snapped his fingers. Just as he snapped his fingers, the second skill that he took from his shadow undead, using the effect of growth link skill activated. Sonic Barrier. Chapter 525. The formations that covered the entire laboratory were high-level isolation formations. Due to those formations, even the aura of the hunters could not go out of the laboratory. Those formations were also the reason Evan was not able to feel the aura of Amara and other humanoid monsters before entering the laboratory. When Amara brought Evan into the lab room, he noticed the same formations that were covering the entire laboratory. Seeing those formations, Evan realizes that it is his best chance to take out Amara, because no one will be able to tell what is happening inside the lab room, because of the isolation formations. Evan wanted to stop Amara from escaping using the escape scroll, so he used the second effect of the growth link skill, and took the skill Sonic Barrier. That could stop her. He could have summoned his 3 sonic butterflies to create the Sonic Barrier, but Evan was sure that unlike Isekai, Amara would definitely have an even higher level escape scroll, so he used the skill himself. He used World Essence to cast the skill, so its power was on a completely different level, compared to the barrier that Sonic Butterflies created when Evan dealt with Isekai. When Amara felt the sonic waves that were confining the space, she couldn't help but feel stunned. She was an S-rank hunter, so she could tell that the space confinement was very strong. It was like someone froze the entire space of the lab room. "Who are you?" Amara asked while looking at Evan with narrowed eyes. Just by feeling the power of the Sonic Barrier skill, she could tell that he was not a B-rank hunter. Evan didn't answer Amara's question, and instead summoned Stone Buffalo, whose name was Stony from his shadow storage. Reinforce this entire place. Stony. The fight between S-rank hunters was no joke, and Evan knew the entire lab room would collapse if he fought against Amara carelessly. He had no intentions of burying himself underground, so before doing anything, he asked Stony to reinforce the entire lab room with its skill. Stony moved lightly when it heard Evan and tapped one of its front feet on the ground. Just as it tapped its foot, a layer of silver-colored stone burst forth and started to cover the entire lab at a speed visible to the naked eye. The layer of stone was not thick, But just by looking at the silver stone, anyone could tell that it was not a normal stone. Amara looked at everything with her eyes wide open. A summoned monster that is black in color and purple burning eyes. This guy is. Seeing Stoney's appearance, Amara immediately thought about the person Sarah told her about a few days ago. You are Evan. Evan raised an eyebrow when he heard Amara. Looks like that BI*ch already told everyone about me. Evan said, and his appearance started to return to normal. Although Amara already expected this, she was still stunned when she saw Evan. According to the information she received from Sarah, the highest level monster Evan could summon was an A+ rank monster. But looking at Stoney, who was releasing the aura of S rank monster, she couldn't help but curse Sarah for giving her wrong information. But after remembering about the humanoid monsters and the second S rank hunter who was outside, she soon calmed down. I guess it is fine as well, Amara muttered and looked at Evan with a smile on her face. Are you here to kill me? I think you can say that, Evan said when he heard Amara, because she was not entirely right. Instead of killing her, he came here to turn her into a shadow undead. Don't you think that you are being quite arrogant to think that you can kill me, just because you have isolated this place? Amara asked after listening to Evan. To be honest, I also think I am being rash. Evan said, there are a lot of things in this place that are dangerous even for me, like the S-rank hunter who is outside. Apparently, that guy is good at hiding himself. If he tries to sneak up on me, it would be difficult for me to avoid his attack, so I think it's best to take you out when we're alone, so that I won't have to fight two of you at the same time later. Amara narrowed her eyes when she heard, you even know about Volak. Volak was the S-rank hunter who was keeping an eye on Kevin and others outside. Amara was sure that his hiding skills were even better than Kazal's, because of what she did with him. So she was quite shocked that Evan was even able to feel his presence inside the laboratory. Although it was faint, that guy was also releasing the wild aura of a monster, that all the people you fused with monsters release. Because of that wild aura, I was able to feel his presence, Evan said and shrugged his shoulders when he saw Amara's narrowed eyes. You are better than I expected. Thanks for the compliment, but Evan said and used the power aura skill to increase his strength. Even if you praise me, I am still going to kill you. Whoosh. Suddenly he disappeared from the place he was standing and appeared in front of Amara. His fist glowed with blue light, and he punched at Amara's head. When Evan punched her, Amara did not even react. It was like she couldn't follow Evan because of his high agility. But just as Evan's punch was about to hit her head, a small formation that was engraved on her lab coat lit up. Boom. A booming sound echoed throughout the lab room, and the air was swept away from the center of the impact. I knew it would be impossible to blow your head off with just a single punch, Evan muttered in a low voice, and looked at the white barrier that was covering Amara. The barrier was not created by an artifact, but instead came out from the formation that was engraved on her lab coat. Sorry to disappoint you, but I think it would be impossible for you to kill me. You see, Amara, who was inside the barrier, said and showed an A-rank core that she was holding. This is a special formation that I created in order to protect myself. As long as I can provide energy using the cores, this formation will never break, so you can forget about killing me. Because I have hundreds of cores inside my storage ring that I can use to keep the barrier activated for a long while. Evan was surprised when he heard she engraved the formation on her lab coat, because he knew it is not easy to engrave these kinds of formations on something like a lab coat. But soon a smile appeared on his face because he was thinking about asking her to engrave these kinds of formations on his clothes as well, after turning her into a shadow undead. Amara felt something was not right when she saw Evan smile, because he was not looking concerned about the barrier one bit. Before she could ask him why he was smiling, a dark aura came out from Evan's body and shadow walk. This is the end of this video. Thank you guys for listening. Hope you enjoyed and wish you wonderful rest of the day. The Silent Ruptors out.